Tonight we are leaving behind an island where magic has become strangely familiar, and returning to a sea where nothing is familiar at all. You stand near the stern of a long, dark ship as the first light of morning spreads across the water. Behind you, the island of Circe rests beneath a thin veil of mist. Cypress trees rise above the shore. Somewhere beyond them are stone halls where lamps still burn faintly in the dawn, where cups once carried enchantment, where frightened men became animals and were restored again, and where you, Odysseus, learned that even the most dangerous power can sometimes become an unexpected guide. Before the island disappears, take a quiet moment to settle into the voyage, and as you listen tonight, you can gently like the video and subscribe, and perhaps leave your location and local time in the comments, joining other travelers listening beneath distant skies. Then the oars enter the water. The journey begins again. Your men pull together in a slow rhythm. Wood creaks against wooden pins. Bronze fittings catch the young sunlight. The sail hangs loose at first, then fills as a cool wind moves from the island toward the open sea. You taste salt on your lips. Beneath the stronger scent of seawater remains something softer from the shore smoke. Herbs. Perhaps the faint sweetness of Circe's halls. You have left many islands behind during the long journey from Troy, yet this departure feels different. Circe has told you what waits ahead. Her warning remains in your thoughts as clearly as though she were standing beside you. First, you will approach the Sirens. Their danger is not strength. They do not need claws descending from the clouds or waves large enough to break a hull. Their weapon is a voice. Circe has warned you that any sailor who hears their song and approaches them will never return home to the people waiting for him. Their thought carries unusual weight for you. Home. Ithaca has become more than an island somewhere beyond the horizon. It has become an idea you have carried through storms, enchantments, battles, grief, and years of wandering. Somewhere there stands your palace. Somewhere your wife, Penelope, waits beneath the uncertain passage of seasons. Somewhere your son, Telemachus, has grown older while you have remained absent. The Sirens, Circe warned, understand how to make a sailor forget all of that. But they are only the beginning. Beyond them lies a narrow passage where two terrors wait opposite one another. Scylla lives among high rocks, hidden within a cavern overlooking the sea. Circe described her as a creature with reaching necks and terrible mouths, capable of taking sailors directly from a passing ship. Across from her waits Charybdis. 3 times each day, according to the old tale, Charybdis draws the sea downward. 3 times she throws it upward again. A ship caught above that enormous mouth may disappear with every man aboard. You will have to sail between them, and there is no route without danger. This is perhaps the true mystery beginning tonight. Not whether you can defeat these monsters, but whether some dangers can be defeated at all. You have spent much of your life surviving because you are clever. At Troy, strength alone did not end the war. Cunning did. Against Polyphemus the Cyclops, you survived through deception. Again and again, when the world closed around you, you searched for the hidden path that others could not see. But Circe's warning offers no hidden path. She has told you something deeply uncomfortable. There may come a moment when survival requires loss. Ancient Greek audiences would have understood the weight of such a warning. Their world was filled with stories in which fate did not necessarily reward the innocent or protect the courageous. A prophecy might reveal what was coming without giving anyone the power to prevent it. Divine knowledge could illuminate the road while leaving the traveller responsible for walking it. Perhaps that is why Circe's words trouble you. Knowledge usually feels like power. Now it feels like burden. The island grows smaller behind the stern. You look toward your companions. Their faces have changed since Troy. These are not the triumphant warriors who once watched flames rise above a defeated city. Sun and salt have roughened their skin. Their hands carry scars from rope and bronze. They have buried friends on foreign shores and watched others disappear beneath waves. Still they row. Perhaps that is one of the quietest forms of courage in the Odyssey, not charging into battle beneath shining armour, but placing the oar into the water once again after everything the sea has already taken. Ahead, sunlight scatters across the waves. Nothing looks dangerous. No monster breaks the surface. No storm gathers along the horizon. No god appears among the clouds. Only the sea. Yet somewhere beyond the curve of the world, the Sirens are waiting. What exactly were they? Even the ancient traditions do not give you one simple answer. Later art often imagines them differently from the creatures modern audiences picture. On surviving Greek pottery, Sirens may appear with the bodies of birds and the faces of women, strange beings poised between beauty and death. Their identity shifts across generations of storytelling, suggesting that their deepest terror was never their physical appearance. It was what they knew. Their song promised knowledge, and that makes them especially dangerous to you. You have always wanted to know. You want to know what lies beyond the next island. You want to understand the intentions of gods. You want to hear what others say about Troy. You want to learn whether your suffering forms part of some larger design. Circe knows this. Perhaps that is why her instructions were so precise. When you approach the Sirens, your companions must stop their ears with softened beeswax. They must hear nothing. You, however, may listen, but only if you are bound tightly to the mast. If you beg to be released, the men must tighten the ropes. It is a strange solution. You will survive not because you resist temptation, but because you admit in advance that you will fail to resist it. For a hero famous for controlling circumstances, this may be one of the wisest decisions of your life. You surrender your future freedom to your present judgment. The wind strengthens. The sail stretches above you with a low, steady sound. Your ship begins moving faster, leaving a widening trail of white water behind the stern. By afternoon, Circe's island has vanished. Only blue remains. Then evening slowly gathers. The western sky becomes amber, then violet. Your companions light a small protected flame aboard the ship, and the smell of smoke mingles with salt and tar. Far above, the first stars emerge. You lie awake beneath them. Perhaps Circe's words return again. The Sirens, Scylla, Charybdis. And beyond those names, other warnings still wait. You do not yet know which fear will prove greatest. You do not know whether the song of the Sirens will sound beautiful or terrible. You do not know which 6 men Scylla may choose. And perhaps most unsettling of all, you do not know whether knowing the future will make its arrival easier. The ship moves onward through darkness. Around you, your companions sleep where they can, wrapped in cloaks roughened by salt. The hull rises and falls gently beneath your body. Water whispers along the planks. Far away, somewhere in the night ahead, something is waiting beside the sea. Perhaps it is already singing. You cannot hear it yet, for now there is only wind, water, starlight, and the memory of Circe's warning travelling with you into the dark. And before you meet the voice that promises impossible knowledge, you must understand exactly what Circe has asked you to do, because by morning, her prophecy will no longer be merely a warning. It will become a plan. Before the island vanished behind you, before darkness settled over the open sea. There had been one final conversation with Circe. You can return to it now. Morning had not yet fully reached her island when you stood near the entrance of her palace. The eastern sky was pale, and the sacred fires inside the halls burned low. Smoke curled toward painted beams darkened by years of flame. Beyond the doorway, dew rested on leaves in the sacred grove, and somewhere among the cypress trees a bird called into the cool air. Circe stood before you without the menace that had surrounded her when you first arrived. She was still divine, still mysterious, still capable of transformations no mortal could understand. Yet something in your relationship had changed. You were no longer simply the stranger who resisted her magic. You had become a traveller she intended to prepare for what came next. She had already sent you farther than most living men could imagine. You had descended toward the realm of the dead. You had spoken with the prophet Tiresias. You had heard the voices of those who could no longer return beneath the sunlight. And now, after surviving that journey, you might have hoped the road home would finally become simple. Circe knew otherwise. Listen carefully, her warning seemed to say, because the sea ahead would punish forgetfulness. First came the Sirens. She told you that they sat in a meadow beside the sea, surrounded by the remains of those who had listened before you. Their voices did not merely charm, they offered something more dangerous understanding. They knew what had happened at Troy. They knew the suffering of Greeks and Trojans beneath the will of the gods. Perhaps they knew even more. That uncertainty matters, because ancient storytellers never completely explain the limits of the Sirens' knowledge. Are they prophets, spirits, creatures possessing supernatural memory, or do they simply know what each listener most desperately wishes to hear? Another interpretation survives beneath the myth. Perhaps the Sirens represent the dangerous desire to hear your own greatness confirmed. For you, that temptation would be powerful. You have spent years away from Ithaca. News of Troy cannot easily reach you across these strange waters. You do not know how poets will remember the war. You do not know which heroes will become immortal in song and which names will disappear. The Sirens may offer an answer. Circe therefore gives you permission to hear them, but only under strict conditions. You must take beeswax, warm it until it softens, and seal the ears of every companion aboard your ship. Then they must bind you upright against the mast. Not loosely, not symbolically. They must secure your arms and legs so completely that desire cannot become action. And if you command them to release you, they must refuse. If you threaten them, they must refuse. If you beg, they must bind you more tightly. You listen beneath the fading torchlight, and perhaps you recognize the strange wisdom of this command. Circe is asking you to prepare for a future version of yourself whom you cannot trust. Yet her warning continues. Beyond the Sirens lies a place where rock closes around the sea. One path leads near Charybdis. Circe describes the water disappearing downward into an immense force, then rising again in violence. Foam churns around dark stone. Even Poseidon himself, she warns, could scarcely rescue a ship once Charybdis swallowed it. You understand storms. You understand hostile warriors. This is different. How do you fight the sea? Then Circe turns your attention toward the opposite cliff. Scylla waits there. Perhaps you imagine another enemy you can confront with bronze. Perhaps your hand instinctively moves toward the place where a sword might hang. Circe recognizes the thought before you speak. Do not fight her. The warning must sting. You are Odysseus, survivor of Troy, a man trained to search for advantage. Yet Circe tells you that if you stop beneath Scylla's cliff and attempt battle, she may attack again. More men may die. Sail quickly. Accept the passage. 6 may be taken. The rest may live. For a moment. Perhaps the palace becomes very quiet. Outside. Wind passes through the grove. You smell damp earth and olive wood burning in the hearth. Cold stone presses beneath your feet. 6 men. You may not know which 6. That uncertainty transforms prophecy into something intimate. You have eaten beside these men. You have heard them speak about home during long nights aboard the ship. Some may have children. Some may imagine vineyards waiting beyond familiar hills. Perhaps one has promised his mother that he will return. Perhaps another carries a small object from Ithaca tucked beneath his clothing. Circe does not give you their names, only the number. Would knowing their names make the choice easier, or would it make sailing into the strait impossible? Ancient Greek myth repeatedly returns to this uncomfortable boundary between fate and choice. Prophecy rarely behaves like a simple map. It reveals enough to burden the person who hears it, but often not enough to remove responsibility. You still have to steer. You still have to command. You still have to decide what your companion should know. Circe then gives another warning, one that lies farther beyond the monsters. If you survive, you will eventually reach Thrinacia, the island where the sacred cattle of Helios graze. Do not harm them. The warning echoes what Tiresias has already told you among the dead. Here is the callback: you cannot ignore 2 supernatural voices, encountered in 2 different realms, have now pointed toward the same danger. Leave the cattle untouched, and home may still be possible. Harm them and destruction will follow. You carry these words with you as you return toward the shore. Your companions are preparing the ship. Amphorae are secured, ropes are inspected, oars lie ready beside the benches. The ordinary work of sailors continues beneath an extraordinary prophecy. You look at them differently now. 6. The number follows you down toward the water, but you say nothing about it. Perhaps this silence is mercy. Perhaps it is deception. Historians and literary interpreters continue to debate the morality of your leadership in moments like this. Yet aboard a fragile vessel in an unpredictable sea, command rarely offers clean choices. Behind you, Circe remains near the shore. The breeze lifts her garments. You step aboard. The ropes are released. Oars push against shallow water, carrying you away from the island. For a little while, Circe remains visible between sea and sky. Then distance makes her smaller. The coastline fades, but her prophecy does not. Ahead lies a voice you have been warned not to trust. Beyond it waits a monster you have been warned not to fight, and somewhere farther still graze sacred cattle you have been warned not to touch. 3 warnings, 3 different forms of temptation, knowledge, heroism, hunger. You do not yet understand that each will test a different part of you. For now, you simply watch Circe's island disappear into morning mist, while the sea opens before you like a road with no footprints, and somewhere beyond the horizon, the first warning waits to become real. By the time Circe's island has disappeared completely, the morning has grown bright enough to erase almost every shadow from the sea. You stand near the steering oar and look behind you once more, but there is nothing left to see, no dark cypress trees, no smoke rising from the palace, no figure watching from the shore. The horizon has closed over the island as neatly to water closing behind a stone. Ahead, the world is blue. Your ship rises gently over long swells, then settles into the hollows between them. The movement is slow enough to become almost soothing. Oars dip into the water in steady rhythm, sending silver droplets across the surface. Above you, the sail stretches beneath a mild wind, its coarse cloth snapping softly whenever the breeze shifts. After everything you have endured, such calm should feel like mercy. Instead, it feels suspicious. You've learned that the Mediterranean of myth rarely announces danger with thunder. Sometimes the sea is most dangerous when it appears to promise nothing at all. Your companions work quietly. One adjusts a leather strap around his wrist. Another checks a rope near the mast. Someone opens a storage jar and passes dried food along the benches. You smell grain, salt, old timber, wool dampened by spray, and the faint residue of smoke clinging to clothing from Circe's fires. These small scents belong to mortal life. They comfort you. For several hours, nothing happens, and that itself becomes strange. No island interrupts the horizon. No dolphins appear beside the hull. No seabirds circle overhead searching for scraps. Even the wind seems reluctant to change. You remember Circe's instructions. The Sirens come first. You know this. But you do not know when. That uncertainty follows every mile. Perhaps you glance toward the men and wonder whether you should tell them everything. They know danger lies ahead. They have followed you too long to believe otherwise, yet you have not told them that beyond the Sirens, Scylla is expected to take 6 lives. 6. The number remains inside you like a stone. You remember the palace floor beneath your feet when Circe spoke it. You remember the sacred fire. You remember the cold certainty in her warning. You also remember another number from another place. At Troy, armies were counted in thousands. Ships filled beaches. Warriors disappeared into crowds. Now your world has narrowed until 6 men feel enormous. Loss becomes heavier when everyone has a face. Near midday, the wind turns slightly. The helmsman adjusts course. Then one of your companions looks upward. You follow his gaze. High above the mast, a single seabird crosses the sky. It should be an ordinary sight, yet the bird flies toward the west, then suddenly turns back toward the direction from which you have come. It circles once over the ship without calling and disappears behind you. Several men notice. No one speaks for a moment. To an ancient Greek sailor, the behavior of birds could carry meaning. Flight, direction, unusual cries, and sudden appearances might be interpreted as signs from gods. Divination through birds belonged to a world in which nature and divine intention were not cleanly separated. Was this bird an omen? You cannot know. Perhaps it was only a bird meeting an unfavourable wind. Another interpretation would say that its retreat reflects what everyone aboard already feels something ahead is worth avoiding. But you continue. You cannot return to Circe forever, and Ithaca does not lie behind you. By afternoon, the sun burns warm against your shoulders. The deck becomes hot beneath bare feet. Your men wet cloth and press it against their necks. Water is rationed carefully. The sea stretches outward with such brightness that looking toward the horizon for too long makes your eyes ache. Still no sirens. You begin to understand another cruelty of prophecy. It makes ordinary time difficult. Once you know danger is coming, every peaceful moment becomes preparation for its end. A rope creaks, and you listen. A wave strikes differently against the hull, and you listen. A man calls from the bow, and your heart briefly tightens. Nothing, only water. Toward evening, the atmosphere changes. The wind weakens. Your sail loosens. The ship slows. You order the men to row more steadily, and the long wooden blades descend together. Their shoulders move beneath worn tunics, muscles tighten. Water curls around the oars. Then you notice something missing. Birds, there are none. For sailors navigating ancient waters, birds could mean land. Their absence is not unusual far offshore. Yet Circe has told you that the Sirens inhabit a meadow beside the sea. There must be land somewhere ahead. So where are the birds? No one could know whether Homer's ancient audiences imagined this silence as supernatural. But the surviving poem creates danger through absence as effectively as through noise. Before the famous song arrives, the world seems to become empty enough for it. Night approaches slowly. You decide not to exhaust the rowers. The wind returns just enough to carry the ship onward, and the men settle into watches. A small flame burns inside a protected vessel near the stern. Its light touches bronze, rope, and tired faces, then disappears into darkness beyond the deck. Above you, stars multiply. Ancient sailors knew these stars intimately. Constellations help shape direction across open water. The Great Bear turned through the northern sky. Orion belonged to another season and another set of stories. The heavens were both practical and sacred. A map filled with heroes, beasts, gods, and memories. You look upward. Perhaps Athena is watching. You have not seen her. That absence troubles you more than you would admit. For much of your life, divine help has arrived indirectly, a thought at the correct moment, a stranger offering guidance, courage appearing when fear should have won. But tonight there is no clear sign, only stars. You sleep briefly, then you dream. You're walking through your palace on Ithaca. The halls are empty. Moonlight enters through open doors. Your footsteps echo across stone. You call Penelope's name, but no answer comes. You call Telemachus. Silence. Then you hear singing. It comes from somewhere beyond the palace walls. You follow it through the courtyard, past an olive tree and toward the sea. The song seems familiar. You cannot understand the words, yet somehow you know they are about you. When you reach the shore, you see your ship floating without a crew. The mast stands alone. Ropes hang from it, and something beneath the water whispers your name. You wake before dawn for several breaths. You do not know where you are. Then the hull moves beneath you. The smell of salt returns. One of your companions is watching the eastern horizon. A narrow band of grey light has appeared there. You rise. The sea is almost perfectly still. Too still. Even the men seem reluctant to disturb it. You remember the bird turning back. You remember Circe's warning. You remember the ropes from your dream. Then a sailor near the bow points forward. At first you see nothing. Mist lies low across the water. But as morning light strengthens, a dark shape slowly emerges inside it. Land. The men stare. No one celebrates. You feel the first cool breath of wind against your face, carrying a scent that does not belong to the open sea. Grass! Flowers, perhaps. Something sweet. The island ahead appears peaceful, almost welcoming, and somewhere beyond that quiet shore waits a song that no man aboard your ship is permitted to hear, except you. The island grows slowly from the mist. At first, you see only a dark line between sea and sky. Then the rising sun begins to reveal its shape, low hills covered with pale grass. A quiet shoreline. Scattered rocks warmed by morning light. Nothing about it resembles the entrance to death. That is what makes it unsettling. You stand beside the mast while your companions continue rowing. The sea remains strangely smooth. Each oar enters the water with a soft splash, and each stroke leaves a widening circle behind the ship. The breeze that carried you through the night begins to weaken. Gradually, the sail loses its curve. It hangs above you, still. You look toward the island. Circe's warning returns. The Sirens. Until now, they have existed only in words spoken beside sacred fire. Now their shore is before you. The sweet scent you noticed at dawn grows stronger. It drifts across the water with hints of wildflowers and sun-warmed grass. After years of salt, smoke, blood, wet timber, and unfamiliar coastlines, the fragrance feels almost impossibly gentle. Some of your men breathe deeply. One smiles. Perhaps that troubles you more than fear would. Danger usually announces itself through discomfort. A storm darkens the horizon. A hostile warrior raises a spear. Rocks break waves into white foam. Here, everything invites you closer. The warmth of the sun settles across your shoulders. The water glitters. Somewhere inland, the meadow seems to move beneath a faint breeze that never reaches your sail. And there are no birds. You remember the single seabird from yesterday, circling once above the mast before turning back towards Circe's island. Was that the warning? Perhaps. Ancient Greek sailors lived in a world where an unusual movement in nature could become meaningful because the gods were believed to communicate through signs. A bird reversing its course, an unexpected wind, a flame behaving strangely before sacrifice. Any might encourage a traveller to reconsider the road ahead, but prophecy has already given you your road. You cannot simply turn around. Ithaca remains beyond this island, beyond Scylla and Charybdis, beyond dangers you cannot yet see. So you continue forward. Then the wind dies completely. The sail collapses against the mast. Your companions exchange glances. You hear the fabric settle. After that, the silence becomes enormous. No wind, no gulls, no insects from shore. Even the waves seem reluctant to break. Only the oars remain. Dip, pull, rise, dip, pull, rise. The rhythm carries you toward the island. You begin preparing. From the ship's stores, you take a piece of beeswax. It is firm beneath your fingers at first, but the warmth of the sun slowly softens it. You work it between your hands until it becomes pliable. Your companions watch. They know Circe gave you instructions. Now those instructions become real. You divide the wax carefully. Each man receives enough to seal both ears. The smell is faintly sweet, almost like the meadow ahead. You move among the rowers yourself, checking that the wax has been pressed securely into place. One man laughs nervously when another gestures that he cannot hear him. The laughter feels strangely distant even to you. Soon, communication becomes visual. Hands, eyes, nods. The ship has become a world without voices. Only you can still hear. And suddenly you become aware of every sound. The groan of timber, water sliding beneath the hull. Your breathing, your heartbeat. You look toward the shore. Still nothing. No figures. No temple. No smoke. No obvious sign that anything lives there. What did ancient Greeks imagine when they heard this part of the Odyssey recited aloud? The Sirens belong to a much older landscape of belief than many later images suggest. Surviving Greek pottery often depicts them not as beautiful women with fishtails, but as strange bird-bodied beings with human heads. Archaeological finds show siren imagery appearing on funerary objects and monuments, connecting these creatures not only with temptation, but also with death and mourning. Their song belongs at a boundary, between knowledge and destruction, between memory and oblivion, between the living sailor and the dead men who listened before him. You remember Circe's description of the meadow. The sirens sit among the remains of their victims. Yet from the ship, the grass looks peaceful. Can you see the bones? Not yet. Perhaps distance hides them. Perhaps the flowers grow over them. Perhaps the horror of the island lies precisely in how easily death becomes part of the landscape. You reach the mast. 2 companions stand ready with rope. They cannot hear your instructions now, so you demonstrate what must be done. Your back against the timber, arms behind it, rope around your chest, more around your wrists. They understand. One hesitates. You nod. Begin. The rope is rough against your skin. They wind it around you, pulling firmly. The mast presses against your spine. Another loop crosses your chest. Your wrists are secured behind the timber until movement becomes difficult. You test the binding. It holds. Then you remember Circe's command. If you ask to be released, they must tighten the ropes. You look into the faces of your companions. These men have obeyed you through storms and battles. Soon they must disobey you in order to save you. You gesture clearly. No matter what I do, do not release me. One of them nods. Another pulls the final knot tight. You are ready. The ship continues forward. The island is close now. Individual trees become visible along the higher ground. Pale flowers cover sections of meadow. Dark stones break the shoreline. Still there is no song. Perhaps Circe was wrong. The thought arrives quietly. You almost welcome it. Maybe this is another island. Maybe currents carried you elsewhere. Maybe the sirens belong to stories sailors tell because they need names for ships that never return. Historians continue to debate whether episodes like this preserve distorted memories of actual Mediterranean geography. Ancient mariners knew dangerous coasts, unusual currents, hidden reefs, and places where navigation could suddenly become deadly. Later Greek and Roman traditions attempted to locate the sirens in real landscapes, especially around southern Italy. But aboard your ship, geography offers no comfort. Something has changed. The men continue rowing, yet one by one they glance toward you. They cannot hear anything. You can. At first, you think it is wind. A faint tone moves across the water, so distant that you cannot tell whether it exists outside you or inside your memory. Then it disappears. You wait, your hands tighten behind the mast. Again, a note. Long, clear, beautiful. It seems to rise from the island and from the sea at the same time. Your companions row onward. None reacts. The wax is working. You are alone with the sound. Then another voice joins the first. The melody is gentle. There is no threat in it. No scream. No command. It feels almost like someone singing from another room in a house you once knew. And then, beneath the melody, words begin to form. You cannot understand them yet, but somehow you sense that the voices already know who you are. The sirens are not singing to a passing ship. They are singing to you. The first notes drift across the water so softly that you could almost persuade yourself they are imagined. Yet you know they are real. Your companions continue rowing because their world has become silent. Beeswax seals their ears, cutting them away from the voices reaching you from the shore. They see sunlight trembling across the sea. They feel the resistance of water against their oars. They smell salt and wildflowers carried from the island. But they hear nothing. You hear everything. The rope around your chest tightens each time the ship rises over a gentle swell. The mast is warm against your back where sunlight has touched it. Your wrists remain secured behind the timber, and when you test them again, the rough fibers bite into your skin. You deliberately stop struggling. Not yet. The song remains distant. You try to observe it as you would observe an enemy before battle. Where does it come from? The meadow? The rocks? The trees? You search the shore. At first, there are only pale flowers moving beneath the sunlight. Then you see shapes, Far inland, near a low rise, something stands above the grass. Perhaps a stone, perhaps a figure. The distance makes certainty impossible. Another shape appears beside it. You narrow your eyes. Circe never told you exactly what the Sirens would look like. Ancient artists would disagree as well. Some surviving images show creatures with human heads and bird-like bodies, sometimes with wings spread beside ships. Later traditions transform them further, until the siren becomes almost inseparable from other beautiful supernatural women of the sea. But here, approaching their island, you cannot know which image is true. Perhaps that uncertainty belongs to their power. The song grows clearer. Now you hear harmony. One voice rises, another moves beneath it. Then words emerge. They call you by name, Odysseus. The sound passes through you. Your companions do not react. They cannot. Again the voices call Odysseus. Not stranger, not sailor, not king. Your name. After so many years away from home, there is something almost painful about hearing it spoken with such tenderness. The Sirens know you, or they want you to believe they do. They sing of Troy. Suddenly the island seems less important than the words moving across the water. They know about the war. They know about the walls. They know about the long years beneath those walls, the campfires burning across the plain, the bronze armor glowing beneath dawn, the ships drawn onto the shore. You remember smoke. You remember dust. You remember the smell of leather and sweat beneath armor. You remember friends who will never see Greece again. The song touches each memory without forcing it. That is what makes it dangerous. The Sirens do not erase your past. They offer to explain it. Come closer. Their voices seem to promise, and you will understand why everything happened. Why Troy had to fall. Why Achilles had to die. Why so many men crossed the sea only to become names spoken beside funeral fires. Perhaps they can tell you why you're still alive. Your breathing changes. You pull once against the rope. The knot holds. A rower looks toward you. You force yourself to remain still. Circe's warning returns. If you command them to release you, they must tighten the ropes. You had understood the instruction intellectually. Now you understand why it was necessary. The Sirens are not offering pleasure alone. They are offering certainty. For someone like you, that is far more seductive. Ancient Greek storytelling repeatedly places human beings against the limits of knowledge. Oracles speak in riddles. Prophets reveal fragments. Gods understand more than mortals, but rarely explain everything. To know too much may itself become dangerous. You have survived because you ask questions. You observe. You doubt appearances. Yet what happens when curiosity itself becomes the trap? The song grows louder. You can now see the Sirens more clearly, though distance and shimmering heat distort their forms. They wait among the meadow. Around them lie pale objects. At first you mistake them for stones. Then sunlight catches something smooth and white. A skull. Another beside it. Bones scattered beneath flowers. Your stomach tightens. The meadow's a graveyard, yet the voices remain beautiful. That contradiction is almost unbearable. Death should sound like fear. Here it sounds like welcome. You pull harder against the ropes. One of the men sees you. He turns toward another rower and gestures. They remember your command. Two men leave their benches briefly and approach. You shake your head. Then, almost immediately, you change your mind. Release me. You say the words. They cannot hear them. You repeat them louder. Release me. Nothing. You jerk against the bindings and point toward the island. The men exchange a glance. Then they do exactly what you ordered before the song began. They tighten the rope. The fibers press across your chest. You become furious. For several breaths. These loyal companions seem like enemies standing between you and revelation. You command them again. They ignore you. You threaten. They pull another knot tight. The ship continues forward, and somewhere beneath the desperation, another part of you remains awake. The Odysseus who prepared for this moment. The man who knew that future desire would overpower present judgment. Your earlier self has trapped your later self for his own protection. There is strange wisdom in that. You cannot trust your ears, so you trusted rope. You cannot trust your commands, So you gave your crew an earlier command, stronger than any command you might give now. The Sirens sing more urgently. They promise that no traveller leaves them without greater knowledge. They know what happened on the Trojan plain. They know what happens across the fertile earth. Perhaps they know what waits in Ithaca. The thought strikes deeper than everything before it. Penelope, Telemachus, your palace. Do they still wait? The Sirens might know. You scream for the men to turn the ship. They row. You struggle until the ropes burn against your wrists. The mast does not move. Then you remember the dream. The empty palace, moonlight across stone, the abandoned ship, ropes hanging from the mast, and something beneath the water whispering your name. Was the dream a divine warning? Was Athena reaching you through sleep? Or had Circe's prophecy simply entered your mind so deeply that your fears created their own omen? No one aboard can answer. The shore is nearest now. The flowers are visible individually. The bones among them are unmistakable. You see the remains of sailors who once sat where your companions sit, men who also had homes, men who believed they could listen safely. The Sirens call again, Odysseus, and for one terrible moment, you want knowledge more than Ithaca. Then the oars pull, the ship advances, the island begins, almost imperceptibly, to slide behind you. The song does not stop, but something has changed. For the first time, the voices are no longer coming closer. You are passing them. The rope holds, the wax holds, and your companions, deaf to paradise and death alike, keep rowing toward the narrow waters where an entirely different kind of terror waits. The island is beside you now, close enough for the meadow to become more than a pale blur along the shore. You see grass bending beneath a breeze you cannot feel. You see flowers scattered across the slopes, white and yellow beneath the sun. Between them lie the remains of those who came before you, bleached by seasons of light and salt air. And still the Sirens sing. Their voices do not belong to the peaceful landscape around them. They seem too clear, too close, as though the distance between ship and shore has somehow disappeared. You remain bound against the mast. The ropes hold your wrists, chest, waist, and legs. Your companions row steadily beneath you, sealed inside silence by the beeswax you placed in their ears. They cannot hear the promise. You can. The Sirens sing of Troy again, but now their song becomes precise. Images rise within you so vividly that for a moment the sea seems to disappear. You see the Trojan plain beneath a copper-coloured evening sky. Fires burn before the Greek ships. Spears stand beside shields. Horses stamp against dry earth. Beyond the camp, Troy rises behind its walls, towers dark against the fading sun. You almost smell the smoke. You hear bronze striking bronze. You see faces: Agamemnon, Menelaus, Ajax, Achilles. Men already dead seem to walk again inside the song. That is when you understand the true danger. The Sirens do not merely promise knowledge of distant things. They give memory the feeling of presence. You have spent years carrying Troy behind you. You sailed away from its ruined walls, but the war never completely sailed away from you. It survives in dreams, scars, habits, silences. Now the Sirens open that buried world. They sing of Achilles beside the ships. You remember his anger, his terrible brilliance in battle, the knowledge that his own glory would shorten his life. They sing of Hector beneath the walls. You remember the enemy as a man rather than a distant name husband. Father, defender of a city already marked by fate. Then the voices turn toward you. They sing of the wooden horse, your horse. The strategy that ended a war strength had failed to end. The song praises your intelligence, your patience, your cunning. It tells you what every proud part of you wants to hear. Without Odysseus, Troy would still stand. You pull against the ropes. The men nearest you glance upward. They see your mouth moving but hear nothing. You tell them to stop. They row harder. The island moves slowly past. Ancient Greek listeners would have recognized something uncomfortable in this temptation. Kleos, the glory preserved through song, mattered deeply within heroic culture. A warrior could die, but his name might survive in poetry, And here you are listening to creatures who offer exactly that, your own legend. What hero would not want to hear how history remembers him? Yet there is a darker possibility. Perhaps the Sirens know nothing beyond what they can draw from you. Perhaps they are mirrors. Perhaps every sailor hears a different song. The Odyssey never fully explains this. And that silence has allowed the Sirens to remain mysterious for thousands of years. What would another man hear? A merchant might hear of wealth waiting beyond the horizon. An old sailor might hear the voice of someone long dead. A young warrior might hear his future glory. And you hear understanding. The song changes. Troy fades. Now you hear Ithaca. Your body becomes still. The voices describe an island rising from the western sea. Rocky hills, olive trees, harbours protected from rough water, paths winding between stone walls, goats moving across dry slopes beneath afternoon sunlight. Home. You close your eyes. For years you have tried to remember the exact sound of wind passing through Ithacan trees. Now you hear it. You hear footsteps across your palace courtyard, a loom moving inside a chamber, a boy laughing, Telemachus. But the memory's wrong. When you left for Troy, your son was an infant. You do not know the voice of the man he is becoming, yet the Sirens give him one. That impossibility should warn you. Instead, it nearly breaks you. You call to the crew, turn toward the island. No response. You shout again. The rowers watch the man ahead of them and maintain the rhythm. You twist your wrists until pain burns beneath the rope. The Sirens promise more. They can tell you whether Penelope still waits. They can tell you what has happened inside your palace. They can tell you how your story ends. There. That is the deepest temptation. Not memory, the future. You have received prophecies from Tiresias and warnings from Circe, but prophecy gives only fragments. It reveals enough to guide and frighten you while leaving the final shape of destiny hidden. The Sirens offer the whole pattern. Come closer. Know everything. For a moment, you imagine stepping onto their shore. Perhaps you would sit among the flowers. Perhaps the singing would continue while years passed unnoticed. Perhaps your bones would eventually lie beside the others. Would you care if before death you understood everything? The question frightens you because you cannot answer it immediately. A shadow crosses the deck. You open your eyes. Clouds have begun gathering far to the west. Nothing threatening yet, only grey shapes above the horizon. But the sunlight on the Sirens' meadow dims. For the first time, their island looks cold. The bones become clearer. Skulls lie among the grass. Ribs rise like broken frames. Fragments of clothing move in the breeze. The promise of knowledge is surrounded by people who never return to share what they learned. That may be the most important warning of all. Knowledge without return leaves no wisdom for the living. You remember Circe. You remember her calm insistence that you be bound. You remember the strange bird turning back over the sea. You remember your dream of the empty palace. Warnings upon warnings, and yet the song remains beautiful. The Sirens call you again. This time you do not shout. You breathe. The rope presses against your chest. You feel the mast behind you. You listen, not because the danger has ended, but because there is nothing else you can do. The ship continues. Stroke by stroke, the meadow begins to fall behind. The voices stretch across the growing distance. They sing one final promise. There are things about your fate you still do not know. Things Circe did not tell you. Things Tiresias left hidden. Things even Athena has never revealed. For one moment, curiosity rises again. Then another wave lifts the ship. The shore slips farther away. The voices soften. Your companions row. And slowly, almost painfully, the most beautiful sound you have ever heard begins to fade into the ordinary whisper of the sea. The song is fading. But fading is not the same as gone. You remain bound against the mast while the Sirens' island drifts slowly behind the stern. The meadow is smaller now, its pale flowers merging into a single band of colour along the shore. The bones that seemed so clear only moments ago become white flecks among the grass. The voices still reach you. They are softer, almost tender. That makes them harder to resist. When the song was loud, you could recognize the struggle. Your body fought the ropes, your wrists burned. Your voice became raw from commands your companions could not hear. Now the sirens seem to withdraw from force. They whisper. They offer one final chance. You could still turn back. You know the crew cannot hear you, but you call anyway. Your words are swallowed by the rhythm of the oars. The men row with their heads lowered. Sweat runs across their temples. Their shoulders rise and fall beneath worn cloth. To them, this passage is strangely ordinary. They know danger surrounds them because you told them so. Yet the danger itself is inaccessible. You envy them. For the first time, perhaps ignorance seems like a kind of freedom. The sirens know this too. Their voices move into the spaces left by your uncertainty. They sing of Penelope. You hear the sound of a loom, thread passing between practiced fingers. You imagine torchlight inside your palace, illuminating stone walls you have not touched for years. You imagine your wife seated in silence while strangers gather beyond the chamber. Is that truly happening? You do not know. The sirens might, or perhaps they are giving form to the fear you already carry. Ancient audiences knew that your greatest enemy during the voyage home was not always a monster. Sometimes it was uncertainty. You knew where Ithaca stood, but you could not know what time had done there. The song offers to remove uncertainty. That promise is nearly irresistible. Then you hear Telemachus, not as the infant you remember, as a grown man. His imagined voice calls you father. You wrench against the rope. The mast shudders. One rower looks back. Your eyes meet. You point desperately toward the island. Turn around. He cannot hear the words, but their meaning is obvious. The man hesitates. For one dangerous heartbeat, you see loyalty struggling against obedience. You are his king, his commander, the man who has brought him through impossible places. Ordinarily, your command should be enough. Then he remembers the earlier command, the one you gave before desire entered your mind. He signals another companion. They approach. You shout at them to stop. They pull another rope around your body. You curse them, though the words mean nothing inside their silence. They tighten it across your chest. You order them again. Nothing. You beg. They tie another knot. The humiliation is almost as painful as the rope. Odysseus, king of Ithaca, architect of Troy's destruction, survivor of the Cyclops and the underworld, cannot make two ordinary sailors obey him. And that is precisely why you survive. Your power has been deliberately taken away. There is a strange transformation happening here. At Troy, you survived by controlling others. Against Polyphemus, you survived by controlling information. You called yourself nobody. You manipulated expectation. You waited for the right moment. Here, survival requires you to control yourself by admitting that you cannot control yourself. You created a boundary while your judgment was clear. Now the boundary holds when your judgment fails. Modern readers sometimes see this as one of the Odyssey's most psychologically recognizable moments. You understand beforehand that temptation will change what you want, so you make it impossible for the tempted version of yourself to act. Ancient Greeks would not have described the mind in modern terms, yet they understood conflicting desires deeply. Their myths are filled with characters who know what they should do and nevertheless feel pulled towards something else. You are now one of them. The siren's song weakens further. You can no longer distinguish every word. Only fragments reach you. Troy, knowledge, home, Odysseus, then something else. A warning. You stop struggling. For several breaths, you listen carefully. The melody carries words you cannot fully understand. A narrow sea, a cliff, men crying out, dark water turning beneath a ship, Scylla, Charybdis. Your skin turns cold despite the warmth of the day. Did the sirens just reveal what waits ahead, or is your mind combining their song with Circe's prophecy? You cannot know. The uncertainty remains. Yet the image is vivid. You see 6 shadows lifted against the sky. Then the song changes and the vision disappears. 6. Again that number. Circe spoke it beside the sacred fire. Now perhaps the sirens have echoed it. A coincidence. A divine sign. A warning carried through music. You stare toward the receding island. For the first time, you no longer want to return. Not because the song has lost its beauty, because you're beginning to understand that knowledge itself can become another form of captivity. What good would it do to know exactly which 6 men will die? Would you look at them differently? Would you protect them and expose others? Would the attempt to change fate become the very thing that fulfills it? Greek prophecy often moves through such dangerous circles. The effort to escape a prediction may lead directly toward its fulfillment. Perhaps Circe's silence about the names was mercy after all. The island becomes smaller. The meadow disappears behind a low headland. Only the highest ground remains visible. The voices fade with it. One final note travels across the sea. Then nothing. You wait. The men continue rowing. Water moves against the hull. A rope creaks above your head. Somewhere far away, a seabird calls. The ordinary world returns so suddenly that it feels unfamiliar. You breathe deeply. Salt, tar, sweat, sea wind. No flowers. No impossible voices. You look toward the companions who tightened your ropes. One watches you cautiously. You nod. He waits. You nod again. Only then does he begin untying the knots. The rope loosens around your chest. Blood returns painfully to your wrists. You flex your fingers. Another man removes the wax from his ears. Then another. Sound returns to their world. They hear waves, oars, wind. Perhaps they ask what happened. Perhaps they want to know what the sirens sang. You look back. The island has nearly vanished. You could tell them. You could describe Troy restored through song. Penelope's loom. Telemachus calling you father. The promise of knowing your fate. Instead, you remain silent. Because ahead, beyond the calm water, cliffs are beginning to rise from the haze, and you remember the final image carried through the sirens' fading song. 6 shadows against the sky. Before the sirens' island disappears completely, you look back one final time. Distance has softened everything. The meadow that seemed filled with individual flowers has become a pale strip beneath the afternoon sky. The figures of the sirens can no longer be distinguished. Even the terrible whiteness scattered through the grass has almost vanished. Almost. For one moment, sunlight breaks through the gathering clouds and falls across the shore. You see the bones again. Not clearly enough to count them, clearly enough to understand. The sight remains with you after the island slips behind the horizon. Your companions have removed the beeswax from their ears. The strange silence aboard the ship has ended. Men speak again. Someone laughs quietly, perhaps from relief. Another asks what you heard. You do not answer immediately. How could you explain it? You could tell them the sirens sang of Troy. You could tell them they knew your name. You could tell them their voices seemed to carry memories across the water until dead men walked again inside your mind. But describing the song would not reproduce it. Perhaps that is fortunate. One companion asks whether the sirens were beautiful. You consider the question. Were they? You are no longer certain. You remember forms in the meadow, shapes distorted by distance and sunlight. Human faces, perhaps. Wings, perhaps. Something neither fully human nor entirely animal. But their true beauty was never visual. It was the feeling that they understood you. That is harder to forget. The ship moves onward. Behind you lies a shore where sailors came seeking something and never left. Ancient Greek audiences would have recognized the warning immediately, though perhaps not in the simple form of a moral lesson. Greek myth rarely tells you that curiosity itself is evil. Odysseus survives precisely because he is curious, adaptable, and hungry to understand the world. The danger lies elsewhere. There are kinds of knowledge that demand a price. The sirens offer information without journey, wisdom without experience, answers without return. Their victims reach the shore, hear what they desire, and remain there until the body fails. Perhaps that is why the bones matter. The song promises immortality through knowledge. The meadow reveals mortality. You look down at your wrists. Red marks circle the skin where rope pressed against you. You touch one gently. A small wound. A reminder. Without that rope, your bones might now lie among the flowers. The thought is strangely calming, not because death has become less frightening, but because the danger is behind you. For now, ahead, the sea is changing. The long, gentle swells have become shorter. The ship rises and falls more frequently. A cool wind moves across the deck, carrying none of the sweetness from the Sirens' meadow. Instead, you smell stone, wet stone, land. You look toward the horizon. The cliffs you noticed earlier have become clearer. Dark shapes rise from the sea, steep and severe, their upper slopes disappearing beneath strips of mist. Circe's second warning returns. Scylla. Charybdis. You feel the marks around your wrists again. The Sirens were a danger you could prepare for completely. Wax, rope, obedience, a plan. The next danger is different. Circe offered no plan that saves everyone, only a choice between losses. The memory of the Sirens' final song returns. 6 shadows lifted against the sky. You still cannot decide whether you truly heard those words or whether fear created them. Scholars have long noticed how prophecy and anticipation shape the Odyssey. Events are often foretold before they occur, changing the emotional experience of the journey. You do not simply meet danger, you approach it knowing something about what it may take from you. The audience knows too. That knowledge does not weaken the story. It deepens the dread. You glance toward your companions. Which sex? The question enters your mind before you can stop it. A man near the bow is repairing a leather binding around an oar. Another is drinking carefully from a cup. 2 others argue quietly about whether the clouds mean rain. Ordinary men doing ordinary things. You hate yourself for wondering which faces might disappear, so you turn toward the sea. The afternoon passes beneath thickening cloud. Far to the west, thunder murmurs. Not close, not yet. A distant storm moves along another horizon. Its clouds purple beneath the lowering sun. Occasionally lightning flickers inside them without sound reaching you. Another omen, perhaps. Ancient sailors watched weather with practical attention and religious imagination at once. Storms belong to natural patterns, but they also existed within the domain of gods. Poseidon could shake the sea. Zeus commanded thunder. For you, the distinction between weather and divine hostility has become difficult to maintain. Poseidon has reason to hate you. You blinded his son. Polyphemus. There is the earlier decision that still follows your ship. You escaped the Cyclops through cunning, but after reaching safety, pride overcame caution. You revealed your true name. That name allowed Polyphemus to call upon Poseidon. The curse has followed you ever since. Now, looking toward dark cliffs and restless water, you wonder how many dangers ahead belong to geography and how many belong to the god of the sea. No answer comes. The wind strengthens. Your men raise their voices as they adjust the sail. The ship turns slightly. Behind you, the Sirens' island is gone, yet you hear their song in memory. Troy, Ithaca, knowledge, fate. You understand now why those sailors died among the flowers. They may not have been fools. Perhaps some were warriors. Perhaps some were kings. Perhaps they understood the danger and believed understanding made them immune. That thought unsettles you, because you have made the same mistake before. You believed you could speak your name to Polyphemus without consequence. You believed victory had placed you beyond danger. The sea corrected you. Now another lesson settles quietly into place. Wisdom is not merely knowing that danger exists. Wisdom is accepting that knowledge does not always give you mastery over it. Night approaches, the cliffs ahead darken, mist gathers around their upper reaches. Your companions light a small fire in its protected vessel, and warm light moves across tired faces. Food is shared. No one speaks of the bones, but you remember them. You remember how peacefully they lay among the flowers. You remember the Sirens promising knowledge while death surrounded them. And you wonder whether the next passage will offer any such beauty. Circe described Scylla differently. No song, no persuasion, no choice to approach, only hunger descending from stone. Across from her, Charybdis does not even need hunger. She's simply destruction. The ship continues toward the cliffs. Waves strike the hull more firmly now. Somewhere ahead, hidden by darkness and mist, 2 dangers wait on opposite sides of the same road, and unlike the Sirens, neither needs to convince you to come closer. There is only one way home. It passes between them. Night settles over the sea before you reach the cliffs. The last light disappears behind heavy clouds, leaving only a narrow glow along the western horizon. Above you, stars emerge slowly through openings in the cloud cover, appearing and vanishing as mist moves across the sky. Your companions have returned to ordinary shipboard life, yet nothing feels ordinary. The wax has been removed from their ears. The ropes that held you against the mast lie coiled near the deck. Your wrists still carry red marks, and your throat aches from commands shouted into a world where no one could hear them. The men know something happened. They saw it. They watched you struggle. They watched their king beg to be released, and now they want to understand why. One sailor sits beside you near the stern. He asks what the Sirens said. You look across the dark water. For a moment, you consider telling him everything. You could describe Troy returning through their voices, Achilles alive again beside the ships, Hector beneath the walls, the wooden horse waiting in darkness. You could tell him about Ithaca, Penelope's loom, Telemachus calling you father in a voice you have never actually heard. You could tell him about the promise of complete knowledge, but something stops you. Perhaps you fear that repeating the words will give them power again. Perhaps you cannot separate what the Sirens truly sang from what your own longing supplied. So you answer carefully. They knew things. The sailor waits for more. You offer none. Eventually he returns to the others. The conversation ends, but the mystery remains. What did you really hear? Even you cannot fully answer. Memories already changing the experience. The melody remains vivid, but individual words blur. Images that seemed sharper than sunlight only hours ago are becoming difficult to hold. Perhaps that is another mercy. The sea moves beneath you with a slow, dark rhythm. You listen. After the sirens, ordinary sounds feel precious. Water against timber. Rope moving through a sailor's hands. The soft scrape of a cup. A man coughing near the bow. Human sounds. Imperfect sounds. Sounds that promise nothing. You begin to understand why silence after extraordinary beauty can feel almost sacred. Ancient Greeks knew music as something far more than entertainment. Song preserved genealogy, ritual, victory, grief, and collective memory. Epic itself survived through performance long before generations encountered it as written text. A singer could make the dead live again. The sirens represent that power taken beyond safe limits. Their song remembers everything, but a mortal song must eventually end. Perhaps that limitation is what makes human storytelling bearable. The men around you tell stories too. One speaks quietly about Ithaca. Another remembers a vineyard. Someone mentions a mother who will have grown older. Their memories are incomplete. No supernatural voice corrects them, and somehow their uncertainty feels warmer than the siren's perfection. You look toward the mast. Only hours ago, you would have abandoned all of these men to reach the shore. That realization brings no comfort. The sirens did not create your curiosity. They revealed its depth. You wanted to know. You still want to know. What has happened at home? Does Penelope wait? What kind of man has Telemachus become? How many more companions will die before Ithaca? The last question leads inevitably back to Circe. 6. You look away from the crew. The prophecy returns with painful clarity. You survived the sirens without losing a man. That should feel like victory. Instead, it makes the next warning heavier. Perhaps the gods have given you one perfect escape only because the next cannot be perfect. A flash appears among distant clouds. Several heartbeats later, thunder rolls faintly across the sea. Your companions glance upward. The storm remains far away, but the wind has changed direction. Cold air moves over the deck. You smell rain. Then another sound reaches you. Not thunder, something lower, continuous. You rise. The helmsman hears it too. The men become quiet. Far ahead, hidden in darkness, water is roaring. You cannot see its source. The sound comes and goes with the wind. At first it resembles surf striking cliffs. Then it deepens. A vast rushing noise. Circe's description returns. Charybdis swallowing the sea. You stare into the darkness. Could you already hear her from this distance? or a wave simply breaking somewhere along the rocks. No one can know. The uncertainty spreads across the ship. One man touches a small charm hanging beneath his clothing. Another murmurs a prayer. Ancient sailors carried religion onto the water because the sea offered so many things beyond control. Before voyages, sacrifices might be made. Prayers could be directed toward Poseidon or other divine powers associated with safe passage. At harbours, sanctuaries connected travel, trade, danger, and gratitude. Out here, there is no marble temple, no altar, only a wooden ship beneath the stars. Still, a sailor can pray. You do too. Perhaps to Athena. You do not ask for glory. Not tonight. You ask for judgment. The request surprises you. Once you might have asked for strength or victory. But Circe has already told you that strength will not solve what lies ahead. The distant roar continues. You remember the Sirens' promise. They offered knowledge of all things. Perhaps, had you reached their shore, they could have told you exactly how to pass Scylla and Charybdis. Perhaps they could have named the 6 men. Perhaps they could have revealed a secret route Circe did not know. The thought returns with dangerous sweetness. Then you remember the bones. Those who reached the Sirens learned whatever they learned. None sailed away with it. Knowledge that prevents you from continuing the journey is useless to a traveller. You touch the marks on your wrists. The lesson remains there. Ahead, the clouds separate. Moonlight pours through. For several moments, the distant coastline becomes visible. Cliffs rise like walls from the sea. Their faces are pale beneath moonlight. Their summits hidden by mist. Between them lies darkness, a passage. The helmsman looks toward you. You look back. No words are necessary. Tomorrow you will enter that water. Tomorrow the warning becomes choice. The ship continues slowly through the night. Behind you, the sirens are silent. Ahead, the sea is beginning to speak. And as you listen to the distant roar between the cliffs, you realize that you almost miss the song. That thought frightens you most of all. The cliffs remain ahead through the final hours of darkness. Sometimes moonlight reveals them. Sometimes cloud and mist erase them completely, leaving only the low roar of distant water to prove they are still there. You do not sleep. Your companions rest in turns, wrapped in cloaks on the deck, but you remain near the stern with your eyes fixed forward. The steering oar moves gently beside you. Each swell lifts the ship, offers a brief glimpse toward the passage, then lowers you again into darkness. The sirens are behind you. The ropes have been removed. Their song survives only in memory. Yet Circe's second warning grows stronger with every mile. You return to her words. She had described 2 routes so close together that avoiding one danger meant approaching another. On one side, Charybdis. Circe spoke of a fig tree growing above the violent water, its branches stretching over the place where the sea repeatedly disappeared. Beneath it, Charybdis swallowed enormous quantities of water and cast them back again. The image seemed impossible when you heard it beside Circe's hearth. Now the darkness ahead is filled with sound. You begin to believe. On the opposite side waits Scylla. Her home lies within a high cliff, Circe told you, near a cavern difficult for mortal hands to reach. From that darkness she extends herself toward passing vessels. 6 heads, 6 mouths, 6 men. The number returns. You close your eyes. Perhaps you wish Circe had told you less. That thought would have seemed absurd before the sirens. You have always wanted knowledge. Now knowledge is keeping you awake. You know enough to imagine exactly what may happen, but not enough to prevent it. The contradiction feels cruel. The sea beneath you grows colder. Spray touches your face. You taste salt. A sailor rises from sleep and walks toward the bow. He stands there for a while, watching the cliffs. You recognize him. He was among those who tightened the ropes around you when the siren's song overwhelmed your judgment. Hours ago, you hated him for obeying your earlier command. Now his presence comforts you. He glances back. You nod. Perhaps he wonders whether you heard something about the passage in the siren's song. You do not tell him about the 6 shadows. Some knowledge must remain inside you. But is silence still wisdom? That question has changed since the sirens. There! Silence protected the crew from temptation. Here, your silence protects them from fear. Or perhaps it protects you from their anger. The distinction is uncomfortable. You think of leadership at Troy. Commanders often knew things soldiers did not. Plans required secrecy. Deception could save lives. You yourself built victory around hidden information. But this is not Troy. These men are not moving toward an enemy city. They are trying to return home. Do they have a right to know the price Circe predicted? The Odyssey offers no comfortable answer. Ancient heroic leadership could demand decisions in which collective survival outweighed individual choice. Yet the poem repeatedly allows you to feel the human cost beneath heroic action. You are not simply solving a problem. You are choosing which danger your companions will face. Near dawn, the wind weakens again. The distant storm has passed elsewhere, leaving the sky clear in the east. Grey light spreads across the sea. The cliffs emerge. They are larger than you expected. One rises steeply from the water, its surface broken by cracks and narrow ledges. Mist clings to the upper rock. Dark vegetation grows wherever roots can hold. Across the passage stands another mass of stone. Between them, the sea narrows. The water does not move normally there. Even from this distance, you can see patterns forming across the surface. Long bands of foam, circular currents, dark patches where water seems deeper than the surrounding sea. Your companions wake one by one. Conversation disappears. Everyone watches. One man whispers a prayer to Poseidon. You hear the name. Poseidon, the god whose son you blinded. The curse returns through memory. Polyphemus standing on the shore, blood dark around his ruined eye, lifting his hands toward his divine father. May Odysseus never reach home, or if fate allows him to return, may he come late, alone, after suffering greatly. You had heard the curse across the water. At the time, perhaps victory still filled you with confidence. Now you stand on a much smaller ship with far fewer companions. Late, suffering, not yet alone. The prophecy seems to be building itself around you. Was the Cyclops' prayer accepted immediately? Did every storm since then belong to Poseidon? Or do human beings remember curses more strongly when disaster follows? No sailor aboard can know. But you know this pride made you reveal your name. That decision cannot be undone. The callback is painful because the Sirens had just praised the same cleverness and glory that once made you boast before Polyphemus. They sang of Odysseus the great strategist. They did not sing of Odysseus shouting his identity across the sea after safety had already been won. Perhaps true memory must include both. Glory and error, cunning and pride, survival and cost. The sun rises. Golden light touches the upper cliffs while the passage below remains shadowed. Then the water changes. A strange vibration passes through the hull. The men look down. The sea beneath the ship is moving toward the strait. Not rapidly, not yet, but steadily. The helmsman adjusts the steering oar. You order the sail managed. The crew responds. Fear becomes work. Ropes tighten. Oars are positioned. Supplies are secured. The ship becomes a living mechanism held together by wood, fibre, skill, and trust. You watch your men prepare. 6. Again the number comes. You force it away. Circe told you not to fight Scylla. She told you to sail quickly. Better to lose 6 than all. You understand the logic. You hate it. Ahead, mist moves along the cliff face. For a moment, you think you see something inside a dark opening high above the water. A shape, then nothing. Perhaps shadow. Perhaps Scylla across the strait. The surface begins turning in a slow circle. Foam bends around an invisible centre. The roar deepens. Charybdis. The 2 warnings are no longer stories. They occupy opposite sides of the horizon. You stand between them. Behind you lies the island where knowledge nearly destroyed you. Ahead lies the place where knowledge cannot save everyone. And as the current begins carrying your ship toward the narrowing sea, Circe's final command returns with terrible clarity. Do not try to defeat what cannot be defeated. Choose the loss you can survive. The passage opens before you like a wound carved into the earth. On either side, cliffs rise from the sea, ancient and silent. Their stone faces catch the morning light above. but below they remain dark, covered in mist and shadow. The air feels colder here. The warmth of the open sea has disappeared, replaced by a damp wind that moves through the narrow channel. Your ship enters slowly. Every man aboard understands that this is no ordinary stretch of water. No one speaks loudly. The sea itself seems to demand silence. You hear the creaking of the hull, the scrape of rope against wood, the controlled breathing of sailors who are trying not to show fear. The smell of salt is stronger here, mixed with the scent of wet stone rising from the cliffs. Ahead lies the place Circe warned you about, the place where no victory is complete. On one side waits Charybdis. The water beneath her begins to move. At first, it appears almost beautiful. A wide circle forms upon the surface, turning slowly beneath the sunlight. White foam traces the edges. Small waves are pulled inward, disappearing into the center. Then the movement increases. The sea begins to descend. A deep roar rises from below. The sound is unlike any storm you've heard. Storms arrive from above, with clouds and thunder and violent winds. This danger comes from beneath. The ocean itself seems hungry. Your men grip their oars. Some look toward you. You do not look away. You have faced monsters before, but Polyphemus had a face, a voice, a body that could be tricked. Charybdis has none of those things. She is simply a force, and that may be more terrifying. Ancient Greeks often transform the unknown parts of nature into stories of divine beings and monsters, a dangerous current, a deadly whirlpool. A coastline that destroyed ships again and again could become the home of a creature that represented the uncontrollable power of the sea. For sailors, myths were not merely fantasies. They were memories. A story about a monster might preserve the truth that a certain place should be feared. Across from Charybdis, the cliff rises. At first, it appears empty. Only rock, only mist, only shadows. You know better. Somewhere within that darkness is Scylla. Circe's description returns, a creature hidden above the water, waiting, not chasing, not searching, simply waiting for ships to pass beneath. That detail troubles you. The Sirens needed you to come closer. Charybdis pulls everything toward her, but Scylla does nothing. She does not need to. She knows the path sailors must take. You look at the distance between the two dangers. There is no safe center. That is the cruel design of this place. Move toward one side and you approach destruction. Move toward the other and you risk something equally terrible. The helmsman waits for your order. You feel the weight of command. At Troy, thousands followed decisions made by kings. Now only a handful of men remain. Yet the burden feels greater. A king can hide behind an army. A captain cannot hide from the faces before him. You glance at the crew. The same men who trusted you through storms. The same men who rowed while you listened to the sirens. The same men who tightened your ropes when you begged them not to. Their lives are connected to your decision. A strange thought enters your mind. Perhaps this is why Circe did not give you a way to win. Perhaps the lesson is not about defeating monsters. Perhaps it is about accepting the responsibility of choosing. The ship moves deeper into the passage. The current becomes stronger. Your men pull harder against the oars. Water splashes over the sides. The deck becomes wet beneath your feet. A sailor slips but catches himself against the mast. Another reaches for him immediately. Even here, even now, kindness remains. That small gesture affects you more than you expect. The monsters ahead are legendary, but the men beside you are real. They are not symbols. They are not numbers. They are not merely the 6 predicted by prophecy. They are companions who have shared hunger, fear, and exhaustion. The prophecy becomes heavier. You wonder whether Circe's warning was meant to prepare you or punish you. Would knowing the future make you more merciful? Or would it turn every moment before the attack into suffering? You remember the Sirens. They offered knowledge without limits. Now you begin to understand why such knowledge can become unbearable. There are some things mortals survive by not knowing. A sudden cry rises from the bull. You turn. One of the sailors points upward. Everyone follows his gaze. For a moment the cliff seems empty. Then something moves. A shadow passes across the rock. Too large, Too quick. The men freeze. The sound of the sea continues beneath them. The shadow disappears. Was it Scylla, or only mist shifting against stone? No one knows. And that uncertainty may be the most frightening thing of all. Because fear grows in empty spaces, your hand moves toward your weapon. The old instinct returns. Fight, stand, strike first. It is the instinct that carried you through battles. The instinct that made your name famous. But Circe's warning stops you. Do not fight. Do not stop. Do not challenge what cannot be defeated. You lower your hand. For perhaps the first time in your life, courage requires you not to attack. The ship continues. The passage narrows. The roar of Charybdis grows louder. The cliff above seems closer. The men row with all their strength. Then, through the mist, you see it. A dark opening in the rock. A cavern. Above the water, above the reach of ordinary men, something watches from within. You cannot see the entire shape. Only movement, only darkness, only the terrible knowledge that the prophecy has reached its moment. Behind you lies the Sirens' island, where voices promised everything. Ahead lies the passage where no promise can help. The sea pulls, the cliff waits, and your ship enters the narrow space between them. The ship moves deeper into the passage. The sound of Charybdis surrounds you. It is no longer a distant roar. It has become part of the air itself, vibrating through the wooden hull beneath your feet. The sea twists and pulls around you, dragging the ship toward the violent waters on one side. Your men fight the current. Their hands tighten around the oars. Their shoulders strain. The rhythm that carried you through storms and islands now becomes something desperate and immediate. Pull, lift, pull, lift. The ship answers every movement with a groan. You stand near the stern, watching the water, watching the cliff, watching the darkness where Scylla waits. And you remember the one thing Circe did not promise. She never promised you would save everyone. That absence has followed you since leaving her island. Perhaps at first you believe there must be a hidden answer. There is always a hidden answer. That is what made you Odysseus. When Troy seemed impossible to conquer, you found the weakness. When Polyphemus trapped you inside his cave, you found a way out. When the sea carried you away from every familiar shore, you searched for another path. You have survived because you refused to accept that a situation was impossible. But now the sea presents a different lesson. Some situations are not puzzles. Some dangers cannot be solved. They can only be endured. The thought feels almost like defeat. You hate it. A warrior understands wounds. A sailor understands storms. A king understands sacrifice. But accepting unavoidable loss is something different. It feels like admitting that your intelligence has limits. And yet perhaps this is the wisdom Circe was trying to teach you. Not every battle is won by overcoming an enemy. Sometimes survival itself is the victory. You remember her face as she spoke, the calmness in her voice, the certainty. She'd seen countless mortals arrive at her island believing they could command every part of the world around them. Heroes, kings, sailors, warriors, all carrying the same belief, that courage and cleverness could conquer anything. Perhaps Circe had watched enough of them fail to know the truth. You cannot command the sea. You cannot bargain with every monster. You cannot rescue everyone from every fate. The passage grows narrower. Mist touches your face. Cold droplets gather on your arms. Your companions shout instructions to one another, their voices finally louder than fear. The silence that surrounded the Sirens is gone. Now sound fills everything. The crash of water, the slap of waves against wood, the cries of men fighting to keep the ship alive. Across the passage, Charybdis pulls again. The sea disappears. For one terrifying moment, you see the surface drop away. A great hollow forms. Water rushes downward. The ship leans toward it. Several men lose their footing. You grab the railing. The helmsman fights the steering oar. Everyone aboard understands the same thing. If you are caught there, there will be no struggle, no final battle, no heroic stand, only disappearance. Perhaps that is why Charybdis frightened ancient sailors so deeply. Death in battle leaves a story. Death in a whirlpool leaves only absence. A ship gone, names forgotten. a space where people once existed. The whirlpool releases, the sea rises again, the ship survives. A cheer almost escapes the men. Almost. Then everyone remembers the cliff. The other danger remains. You look upward. The cavern entrance seems larger now. Something moves within. The mist shifts. A shape extends outward. Not clearly, not completely, but enough. You know. Scylla. Your hand grips the wood beside you. The instinct to command returns. Turn away. Attack. Warn everyone. Do something. But what? Circe's words return. If you stop, more men will die. If you fight, Scylla will take more. The cruel wisdom of the warning becomes clear. You cannot defeat her. You can only pass. That realization creates a different kind of fear. A monster you can fight gives you purpose. A monster you must ignore gives you helplessness. The ship moves closer. Your companions look toward the cliff. They do not know what they are seeing. They only know you're watching. One sailor asks what lies above. You open your mouth. The answer feels impossible. How do you tell a man he is approaching something he cannot defeat? How do you choose 6 people from among those who trust you? You remain silent. The silence feels heavy, perhaps heavier than the rope around your body during the Sirens' song. Then you remember something important. The prophecy from Tiresias, the warning about Helios's cattle, the repeated message that destruction would come not from the gods alone, but from human choices. The gods may set the path, but mortals still walk it. Your choices matter. Even here, even now, you cannot save everyone, but perhaps you can save the rest. The thought does not comfort you. Not enough, yet it gives you direction. You tighten your grip. You look toward the helmsman. The order is simple. Keep moving. No hesitation. The ship begins its final approach through the passage. Above, the cliff grows darker. The cavern opens. The sea churns. And for the first time since leaving Troy, you face an enemy against whom your greatest weapon cannot help you. Not intelligence, not strength, not deception, only acceptance. The ship enters the shadow beneath Scylla's cliff. The world becomes colder. The sunlight disappears. The oars strike water. Once, twice. Then from above comes a sound, a movement, a terrible awakening. The prophecy has arrived. The first sound is not a roar. It is something quieter. A scraping, a movement against stone, almost like something large shifting inside a hidden chamber after a long sleep. The men stop speaking. The oars slow for only a moment. You feel the hesitation spread through the ship. Fear has a sound. It is not always a scream. Sometimes it is the sudden absence of voices. Above you, the cliff rises into darkness. The sunlight that once touched the upper rocks has vanished behind the height of the stone. The cavern entrance is nothing more than a black opening surrounded by jagged edges. You search for movement. Nothing. For several heartbeats, you wonder whether you imagined it. Perhaps this is another trick of the passage. Perhaps the sound came from the waves. Perhaps Circe's warning has made every shadow appear alive. Then the darkness moves. Not quickly, not dramatically. Slowly, a shape emerges from the cavern. At first, you see only the outline. Then a neck. Then another. The ancient stories describe Scylla in different ways across generations, and surviving artistic traditions never fully agree on her appearance. Some imagine a woman above the waist with monstrous forms below. Others describe a creature of many heads rising from the sea cliffs. The details change, but the meaning remains the same. Scylla is the danger that waits where escape seems closest. She does not chase. She does not hunt across oceans. She simply exists at the place every sailor must pass. The creature leans downward. The men see her now. A wave of panic moves across the deck. Someone drops an oar. Another reaches for a spear. A voice calls your name. Odysseus. The sound cuts through you. Not like the sirens. Not like a temptation. This is a plea. A human voice asking for the impossible. You want to answer. You want to give an order that changes everything. Attack. Turn. Row away. Anything. But the truth remains. There is no perfect command. You remember Circe beside the sacred fire. You remember the seriousness in her expression when she told you not to arm yourself. At the time, perhaps you thought the warning was strange. A hero without a weapon, a warrior refusing battle. Now you understand. A weapon creates the illusion that every danger has an opponent. Scylla is not an opponent. She is a force. And forces cannot always be defeated. The ship continues beneath the cliff. The creature watches. Your men row harder. The current pushes. Charybdis roars somewhere nearby, a constant reminder that stopping is impossible. The passage gives you no room for hesitation. You look at the men around you. They are terrified, but they continue. This moment reveals something that ancient audiences valued deeply. Heroism was not only victory, it was endurance. The hero who survives is not always the one who destroys the enemy. Sometimes the hero is the one who continues when destruction cannot be prevented. The creature moves. Fast, too fast. There is no warning, no time, no final conversation, only motion. You hear your companions cry out. The sound is brief, the kind of sound that remains in memory forever. 6. The number arrives before you know whether it has happened. 6 shadows rise against the sky. 6 men lifted from the ship. 6 lives taken before your eyes. The creature retreats upward. The darkness closes. The sea continues moving. For several moments, your mind refuses to understand what has happened. The ship still floats. The oars still move. The sun still shines beyond the cliffs. The world has not stopped. That is the cruelty of loss. The universe continues. The waves do not pause for the dead. The wind does not become silent. The ship does not return them. You stand frozen. Your hand grips the railing until your fingers ache. You want to look away. You cannot. You see the empty places where they stood. A bench with no sailor. A rope no one will pull. A cup left behind. Small details. Human details. The men who remain do not celebrate survival. No one says victory. No one speaks of success, because everyone understands what has been lost. The ship moves beyond the cliff. The shadow of Scylla fades behind you. Ahead, the water begins to widen again. Charybdis becomes distant. The passage opens. You have survived, and yet survival feels like a terrible word. You had been warned. You knew. You carried the prophecy. You carried Circe's instructions. But knowledge did not make the moment easier. Perhaps that is the deepest mystery of prophecy. People often imagine that knowing the future grants power over it, but sometimes knowing only means carrying the weight before everyone else. You knew 6 men might die. Now you know their absence, their names, their voices, their unfinished hopes. You do not know what the Sirens would have shown you if you had reached their shore. You do know this. No knowledge could have prepared you for the silence after. The remaining sailors continue rowing. Slowly, mechanically. No one asks questions. No one needs answers. They understand that their captain is grieving. You turn away from the cliffs. The sea behind you is calmer now, almost peaceful. That seems impossible. How can the same water that carried away 6 men now shine beneath the afternoon sun? How can beauty and suffering exist together? Ancient Greek myth often returns to this question. The world contains both. The gods may create wonders and disasters. Nature may provide life and death. Human beings must continue between them. You close your eyes briefly. You remember each face. You refuse to allow them to become only numbers. 6. The prophecy gave a number. Memory gives names. And that difference matters. Because the dead are not symbols. They are people. The ship leaves the passage behind. The cliffs become smaller. The roar of Charybdis fades. The shadow of Scylla disappears into mist. But inside you, another journey begins. The journey of carrying what cannot be changed. The passage opens behind you, but the memory of it does not. The sea becomes wider again. The cliffs slowly retreat into the distance, their dark shapes fading beneath the afternoon haze. The ship is no longer trapped between stone walls. Yet every man aboard still feels as though some part of him remains inside that narrow channel. The oars move. The sail catches the wind. The ship continues. But something has changed. Before entering the strait, every sailor feared death. Now they understand something more painful. Survival has a cost. You stand near the stern and look back toward the place where Scylla disappeared. The water appears calm, almost beautiful. Sunlight dances across the waves, white birds circle far away. A gentle breeze moves over the deck. The world looks untouched. That is the strangest part. The sea does not remember the men it has taken. The sky does not darken in mourning. The cliffs do not collapse in shame. Only those who remain carry the memory. You think of the 6 companions whose places are now empty. You remember their voices, their habits, the small details that made them more than sailors. One always hummed while working. Another complained about the taste of shipboard food but always ate every portion. Another kept a small carved object from home hidden among his belongings. These details return now. Not the heroic moments, not the battles, the ordinary moments. Because ordinary moments are what people leave behind. The Sirens offered you memory. They promised to reveal the past and future, yet they could never give you what you have now. The true memory of people you knew, the imperfect, human memories that belong only to those who live beside them. Perhaps that is why the Sirens were so dangerous. They offered a perfect version of remembrance. But real memory is different. It hurts. It changes. It carries absence. You walk across the deck. Your companions avoid your eyes at first. Not from anger, from uncertainty. They know you led them here. They know you could not save everyone. They also know you did not abandon them. This tension remains between them. Ancient Greek stories often explored this difficult space between responsibility and fate. A leader may make the correct decision and still suffer because of its consequences. Wisdom does not always produce happiness. Sometimes wisdom only allows you to understand why suffering happened. You find yourself thinking of Circe again. She knew. Perhaps she had seen this moment many times. Perhaps she knew that explaining the danger would not remove the pain. Would you have preferred ignorance? The question has followed you since the Sirens. At the island, you wanted knowledge. Now you wonder if ignorance might have been kinder. But then another thought comes. If Circe had not warned you, all of you might have entered the strait without preparation. The ship might have stopped. Men might have attacked Scylla. More lives might have vanished. Knowledge did not save everyone, but perhaps it saved some. That is the strange nature of wisdom. It does not always create miracles. Sometimes it only reduces disaster. As evening approaches, the crew prepares a small burial ritual. There is no land nearby, no temple, no sacred grove, only the endless sea. They gather what they can, a small offering. A few words, a moment of silence. The sacred fire burns briefly inside a protected vessel. Smoke rises into the wind. Ancient Greeks believed proper burial and remembrance connected the living and the dead. To forget the fallen was a second death. Names preserved identity. Ritual preserved the bond between those who remained and those who had crossed beyond the mortal world. You speak the names you remember. The others add what they can. The sea carries the words away. Perhaps the gods hear. Perhaps only the waves do. No one can know. A mystery remains in every prayer. Night arrives. The ship travels beneath a sky filled with stars. You sit alone near the bow. The water is calmer here, but your thoughts return to the other side of the strait, Charybdis. You remember watching the sea disappear into itself. The image remains impossible. The ocean, which sailors depend upon for movement and survival, suddenly becoming the thing that threatens to erase them. There is a deep symbolism in that. For ancient Greeks, the sea represented opportunity and danger at the same time. It connected islands, carried trade, brought travelers home, and also swallowed ships without warning. The same waters that separated you from Ithaca are the waters you must cross to reach it. The sea is both road and enemy. Perhaps that is why Charybdis remains such a powerful image. She is not evil in the way humans understand evil. She does not hate. She does not punish. She simply consumes. Some forces in life are not cruel. They are simply beyond human control. You think of the many things you cannot command, the passing of years, the choices of others, the movement of storms, the decisions of gods, even your own heart. The Sirens prove that. You believed you were master of yourself. Then you discovered a part of you that wanted something more than survival. The strait has taught another lesson. You may control your actions, but you cannot control every outcome. The ship moves beneath the stars. The men sleep in uneasy silence. Tomorrow will bring another shore, another danger, another decision. But tonight, for a few hours, there is only the sea. You listen to the water, not the enchanted song of the Sirens, not the roar of Charybdis, just water, simple, endless, real, and somewhere beyond the darkness ahead lies the next chapter of your journey. You do not know what waits there. Perhaps that uncertainty is painful. Perhaps it is also what keeps you moving, because even after everything the sea has taken, you are still sailing toward home. The morning after Scylla arrives quietly. There is no storm, no sudden darkness, no sign in the heavens announcing that the world has changed. The sun rises as it always does, spreading gold across the sea. Light touches the wet ropes, the worn wooden boards, and the faces of the men who remain. That ordinary sunrise feels almost unfair. You have learned that grief does not always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it arrives beneath a beautiful sky. The ship moves forward. The empty spaces among the rowers remain. No one sits where the lost men once sat. No one touches their belongings. For now, their absence is too fresh to disturb. You remain near the stern, watching the water pass behind the ship. The waves erase the path you travelled almost immediately. The sea leaves no marks. Only memory remains. And memory is heavy. Your companions are quieter than before. The men who once filled the deck with stories and arguments now speak only when necessary. They check ropes. They repair equipment. They prepare food. They continue because sailors have always continued. Perhaps that is one of the oldest truths of human life. Even after loss, morning arrives. Even after grief, there are tasks waiting. A broken rope must be repaired. A sail must be raised. A ship must continue moving. You understand this now more than ever. When you left Troy, you imagined the journey home as a movement toward peace. But the sea has revealed something different. Home is not simply a place waiting at the end of a road. It is something you carry through every hardship, every loss, every impossible choice. You think again of the moment before Scylla struck. You knew not everything, but enough. You knew the danger. You knew the number. You knew that stopping, fighting, or hesitating could make everything worse. And yet a question remains. Should you have told them? The question follows you across the waves. Your silence protected them from fear before the passage, but did it also deny them a choice? Ancient storytellers often placed heroes inside such moral storms. The greatest struggles were not always between humans and monsters. Sometimes they existed inside the human heart, where every decision carried both wisdom and regret. You have faced enemies with many forms. Now you face a quieter one. Doubt. You imagine the conversation that never happened. You standing before the crew. You telling them that Circe predicted 6 deaths. You telling them that one path would lead toward the monster. You telling them that the sea demanded payment. Would they have believed you? Would they have panicked? Would some have refused to enter the passage? Would that refusal have saved them? Or would it have destroyed everyone? There is no answer, and perhaps that is why the choice remains painful. The past cannot be tested. It can only be remembered. You look toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond it lies another island, another coastline, another unknown. The journey does not stop to allow you to understand every decision. The sea keeps moving. That may be one of the hardest lessons of the Odyssey. Life rarely gives a person enough time to feel certain. You act. Then you discover the consequences. Then you continue. A small bird appears above the ship. It circles once, then lands briefly on the mast before flying away. Several sailors notice. One whispers that it may be a sign. Another says nothing. You watch the bird disappear into the bright sky. Is it a message? A divine sign from Athena? A reminder that the gods still watch? Or only a bird following the wind? No one knows. But ancient Greeks lived in a world where uncertainty itself invited interpretation. Nature was never merely background, a bird, a storm, a dream. or an unusual flame might carry meaning. Perhaps the important thing is not whether the sign has a single answer. Perhaps it is that people continue searching for meaning. You have always done this. You search. You question. You look beneath appearances. That quality saved you many times. It also brought you danger. The Sirens understood that better than anyone. They knew exactly what kind of man you were. A man who wanted answers. A man who could not simply pass by mystery. Yet after Scylla, you begin to understand that not every mystery requires an answer. Some wounds are not solved. They are carried. The afternoon passes. The men prepare another meal. You eat little. The taste of food feels distant. Your mind returns to Ithaca. You wonder how many stories have already reached your homeland. Do they say you are dead? Do strangers sit in your halls? Does Penelope still believe? Does Telemachus search for signs of you? These questions remain unanswered. The Sirens offered certainty. The sea offers none, and perhaps that is why returning home matters. If everything were already known, there would be no journey, no courage, no hope, only a path already finished. As the sun begins to sink, the crew prepares for another night at sea. The sky turns deep blue. The first stars appear. You sit beside the mast, the same mast that held you prisoner during the Sirens' song. Now it stands quietly beside you, a reminder of temptation survived, a reminder of the decision made by your earlier self, a reminder that sometimes wisdom comes from accepting your own weakness. You place your hand against the wood. The grain is rough beneath your fingers. Real! Simple. The world of monsters and prophecies feels distant for a moment. There is only the ship, the men, the stars, the journey, but somewhere ahead. Another warning waits. The island of the sun, the sacred cattle of Helios, the final test that Tiresias and Circe both revealed. You have survived the Sirens. You have passed Scylla and Charybdis. Yet the journey is not finished. The sea still stretches before you, and fate, patient as ever, continues waiting beyond the horizon. The days after Scylla pass slowly. The sea becomes calmer, but peace does not return with the calm. Your companions have survived the monster's cliff, yet part of them remains in that dark passage. They carry the memory of 6 empty places beside them. They carry the sound of voices that ended too quickly, and you carry something heavier, the knowledge that you knew, not everything, but enough. Each morning, as the sun rises over the water, you watch the men prepare the ship. Their movements are slower now. Their conversations are quieter. They have become more careful with each other, as though every person remaining has become more valuable. Loss changes the way people look at one another. Before Scylla, each sailor was one among many. After Scylla, every sailor is someone who could disappear. You understand this because you feel the same fear. You have spent years believing that the greatest threats were those outside you. Armies, monsters, gods. Now you begin to understand that survival also requires facing what happens inside your own mind. The need to blame it, the desire to rewrite the past, the endless question of whether another choice could have saved everyone. But the sea gives no answers. It only carries you forward. One morning, clouds gather on the horizon, not the dark clouds of a storm, soft clouds touched by golden light, the kind of sky poets might describe as peaceful. Yet you have learned not to trust appearances. The Sirens taught you that beauty can hide danger. Scylla taught you that silence can hide death. Now every calm moment carries a shadow. Your companions notice your attention toward the sky. One asks if you expect another sign. You almost laugh. Once, you would have searched every bird, every cloud, every strange movement for meaning. Now you hesitate, because signs are complicated. A warning can save a life. A prophecy can become a burden. A glimpse of the future can make the present unbearable. You think of Tiresias in the realm of the dead, his blind eyes, his prophetic vision. A strange contradiction. The man who could see the future was unable to change his own fate. Perhaps this is the central mystery of prophecy. Why reveal what cannot always be avoided? Ancient Greeks debated this question through countless myths. A prophecy might exist not to provide escape, but to reveal character. The future becomes a mirror showing what a person chooses when the road becomes difficult. You wonder what your own choices reveal. Were you wise? Were you cruel? Were you both? The sea does not answer. Several days later, the sailors begin speaking of food. The supplies are lower. The voyage has lasted longer than anyone expected. Even the strongest men cannot ignore hunger forever. You notice the change, the way they look toward the horizon, the way they count remaining provisions, the way conversations become focused on survival. You remember another warning. Thrinacia, the island of Helios, the sacred cattle. You have carried Circe's words since leaving her island. Do not harm them. You have carried Tiresias' warning from the world of the dead. Do not touch them. Two voices from different worlds gave the same message. That cannot be ignored. Yet you know something else about human nature. Warnings become weakest when people are exhausted. When hunger enters the body, ideals become more difficult to defend. You have seen it before. Men at war. Men trapped far from home. Men who know the consequences and still choose the immediate need. You cannot simply command hunger away, but perhaps you can prevent disaster through leadership. You gather the crew. The sun is lowering behind the sea, casting orange light across the deck. You speak calmly. You remind them of the dangers ahead. You tell them about Helios's cattle. You repeat the warning. No one must touch them. The men listen. Some nod. Some look away. You cannot tell whether they truly understand or simply want to believe they do. Another uncertainty. Another mystery. A warning has been given. But will it be enough? That night you dream. You stand on an island beneath a sky filled with stars. The grass around you glows silver in the moonlight. Cattle move quietly through the fields. Their horns shine like polished gold. You hear a voice from above. Not angry, not loud, simply disappointed. The voice says nothing you can remember when you wake. Only one image remains, a sacred flame going out. You rise before dawn. The dream stays with you. Was it a message, a divine sign, or simply the mind of a tired sailor carrying too many warnings? No answer comes, but the feeling remains. Something ahead waits. You continue sailing. Then, one afternoon, the island appears. Green land rising from the blue sea. A beautiful shore. Fresh water. Trees. Grass. A place that looks like salvation after endless hardship. The men stare. Hope returns to their faces for the first time in many days. And perhaps that is what makes the island dangerous. The most difficult temptations are not always the ones that appear frightening. Sometimes they arrive looking like relief. You guide the ship closer. The harbour waits. The sun shines. The sacred cattle of Helios graze somewhere beyond the hills, and you feel the weight of every warning you have received. The Sirens, Scylla, Charybdis, Tiresias, Circe, all lead in here, all pointing toward a choice that has not yet been made. You survived the monster in the cliff because you accepted what could not be changed. Now you must face a different challenge. Can you prevent what still can be changed before the island of the sun fully appears? Before the sacred shores of Thrinacia welcome your ship, you remain haunted by the passage you have just survived. The sea behind you has widened again, but the memory of the narrow strait remains. You can still hear it. The roar of Charybdis, the cries of men taken by Scylla, the terrible silence afterward. A sailor might leave a dangerous place behind. Yet a dangerous place does not always leave the sailor. It travels inside him. You understand this now. The greatest storms are not always the ones that strike the ship. Some continue quietly within the heart. The men aboard have changed. Before the Sirens, they feared what they did not know. After the Sirens, they feared what they could hear. After Scylla, they fear what they cannot stop. Each trial has removed another layer of certainty. They no longer believe the voyage home will be simple. Neither do you. The island ahead grows brighter beneath the morning sun. Green hills rise above the shoreline, trees move gently in the wind. Compared with the dark cliffs you escaped, this land appears almost blessed. The sight creates a strange feeling, relief and fear, because you have learned that beautiful places may contain hidden dangers. The Sirens taught you that. Their meadow was peaceful. Their song was deadly. Now you look at Thrinacia differently. The grass is green. The shore is calm. Birds circle above the island. A soft breeze carries the scent of earth. Yet you remember the warnings. Do not touch the cattle. Not from Tiresias alone. Not from Circe alone. From both. 2 warnings from 2 worlds. One from the realm of the dead. One from the realm of enchantment. Both pointing toward the same fate. You gather the crew again. Your voice carries across the deck. You remind them of the sacred animals belonging to Helios. You tell them these are not ordinary cattle. They are protected. They belong to a god who sees all things beneath the sun. The men listen. They have heard enough warnings to know this is serious. But you also see something else. Exhaustion. Their faces are marked by years at sea. Their clothing is torn. Their bodies are thinner. They are survivors. And survivors are not always strong. Sometimes they are simply people who have endured too much. This is another mystery within the Odyssey. Why do men who have escaped impossible dangers still make choices that destroy them? Ancient audiences would have recognized the answer. Human weakness does not disappear after suffering. Sometimes suffering creates new weaknesses. A starving man does not think like a well-fed man. A frightened man does not decide like a calm man. A tired man may understand a warning completely and still fail to follow it. You know this better than anyone. The Sirens did not defeat you because you lacked intelligence. They almost defeated you because desire overcame reason. Only preparation saved you. Only the rope. Only the obedience of your companions. Perhaps you should remember this lesson. Perhaps every man requires help from outside himself. No one is entirely safe from weakness. Not even Odysseus. The ship enters the harbour. The sound of waves changes. Instead of striking open sea, they break gently against the shore. The men lower the sail. Ropes move. Wood creaks. After so long on the water, stepping onto land feels almost unreal. Your feet touch earth. The ground does not move. For a moment, you simply stand there. Ancient sailors understood the strange intimacy between humans and land. The sea carried them between worlds, but the shore represented return, safety, and belonging. Harbours were places of trade, prayer, departure, and reunion. Every island carried a promise. Perhaps this one does too. Your men explore carefully. They find fresh water. They gather food. They repair the ship. For the first time in many days, there is almost peace. Almost. You notice the cattle. They move across the fields beneath sunlight. Their bodies are unusually bright. Their presence feels different from ordinary animals. The ancient traditions describe them as sacred creatures connected with Helios, the sun god who sees everything that happens beneath the heavens. Perhaps that is why the warning matters so deeply. The danger is not hidden. It is visible. The temptation is not mysterious. It stands openly in the sunlight. You tell the men again, do not touch them. Then you step away. You need time. You need to pray. You need to ask the gods for safe passage. You walk toward a quiet place beyond the camp. The island is beautiful. Flowers grow among the grass. The sound of waves reaches you softly. Above, the sun moves across a cloudless sky. You think of Helios, a god who watches, a god who sees. The thought unsettles you, because you know what it means to be watched by a god. Poseidon has watched you. Athena has watched you. The gods are not distant ideas. They are forces woven into your journey. You kneel. You pray, not for glory, not for victory, only for restraint, only for wisdom. When you rise, a strange feeling remains, as though something unseen has noticed. A shadow passes over the grass. You look upward. A bird circles high above the island. It follows the path of the sun, then disappears. Another omen, another warning, or simply another creature moving through the sky. The answer remains hidden, but the feeling does not. You return toward the camp. The men are preparing food. They greet you. They seem calmer, perhaps too calm. The danger of Thrinacia is not like the Sirens. There is no voice calling from the shore. No monster waiting in a cavern. No whirlpool dragging ships beneath the sea. The danger is patience, hunger, time, the slow weakening of resolve. And perhaps that is why this trial is so human. A monster can be feared. A temptation must be resisted. As evening arrives, you look across the fields. The sacred cattle move beneath the fading light. Their horns shine. Their bells sound softly. Beautiful. Peaceful. Almost impossible to imagine as the beginning of disaster. Yet you've learned something during this journey. The most dangerous moments are not always marked by terror. Sometimes they arrive quietly. Sometimes they look like rest. Sometimes they sound like relief. Night falls gently over Thrinacia. The island becomes quiet beneath a sky filled with stars. The sacred cattle move slowly through the fields, their shapes barely visible in the moonlight. The sea beyond the shore whispers against the sand, and for a brief moment, you almost believe the journey has finally given you rest. Almost? You know better. Peace has become something you approach carefully. Too many times, calm waters have hidden danger beneath them. You sit near the camp while your companions sleep. A small fire burns in front of you, its flames moving softly in the night breeze. The smell of smoke rises into the darkness. Around you, men breathe heavily after days of exhaustion. They need this rest. Perhaps that is what troubles you most. They are not reckless warriors searching for glory. They are tired men. They have crossed seas no ordinary sailor would survive. They have watched friends disappear. They have followed you because they believed you could bring them home. And now home remains distant. You look toward the stars, somewhere beyond them. The gods continue their endless watching. You wonder whether Athena sees your struggle. You wonder whether Poseidon sees your suffering. You wonder whether the gods care about the difference between a mistake and a moment of weakness. Ancient Greeks often imagined the relationship between mortals and gods as complicated. The gods could offer protection, guidance, or punishment. But they were not simple guardians who prevented every tragedy. Humans still had to choose. That is what makes Thrinacia different. The danger is not a monster, it is choice. The following days become difficult. The wind changes. The sea grows restless. The ship cannot depart. At first, the men accept this. They remember your warning. They remember the sacred cattle. They wait, but waiting is its own kind of test. Hunger grows slowly, not like a storm, not like a monster appearing from darkness. It begins with small things. A man looking toward the fields, a quiet conversation near the fire, a glance exchanged between sailors who believe no one notices. You notice. You have always noticed. It is one of your greatest strengths, and perhaps one of your greatest burdens. You see the danger forming before it arrives. You speak again. You remind them. The cattle belong to Helios. They are not food. They are not supplies. They are sacred. The men nod. They promise. For a moment, you believe them. Then the days continue. The wind does not return. The supplies grow smaller. The sacred cattle continue grazing nearby, untouched and calm. That is what makes the temptation so cruel. The food is visible. The solution appears simple. Hunger says one thing. Faith says another. The men begin to change, not because they have become evil, because suffering changes people. The same sailors who endured Scylla's attack now struggle against an enemy that cannot be fought with courage. Their own desperation. One day, you leave the camp to pray. You ask the gods again for guidance. You ask for wind. You ask for mercy. When you return, something feels wrong. The air is different. The men are quiet. Too quiet. You look toward the fields. The cattle are still there. But something has changed. You see signs. Remains. Evidence. Your heart sinks before anyone speaks. The warning has been broken. For a moment, you simply stand there. You think of Tiresias, the prophet among the dead. You remember his voice beneath the shadowed world. You think of Circe beside her sacred fire. 2 warnings, 2 chances, both ignored. The men approach. Some look ashamed. Others avoid your eyes. No one celebrates. Perhaps they understand immediately what they have done. The mistake is not hidden from them. They have not defeated hunger. They have created a greater danger. You feel anger, then grief, then something deeper, a terrible familiarity. because you know what it means to make one decision that changes everything. You revealed your name to Polyphemus. That single moment brought Poseidon's hatred upon your journey. Now your companions have touched what they were forbidden to touch. Another choice, another consequence. The difference is that this time you cannot protect them. That evening the sky changes, clouds gather, the peaceful island becomes darker, the wind begins moving through the trees, a strange feeling spreads among the men. They know something is coming. Ancient Greek stories often connected broken sacred laws with divine response. The gods were not merely powerful beings, they represented the order of the universe. To violate what belonged to a god was to disturb that order. The cattle were not simply animals, they were a boundary, and the boundary had been crossed. That night you dream again. You see the sun rising over a dark sea. Helios stands above the horizon, but his light is different, cold, distant. He looks toward the earth and speaks with a voice like a fading flame. When you wake, the dream remains. Another sign, another warning, but this time the warning has arrived too late. The men prepare to leave. The wind has returned. They believe the danger is past. You know better. The sea ahead looks empty. The sky looks clear, but you have learned that appearances mean little. The Sirens appeared beautiful. Scylla appeared hidden. Charybdis appeared like ordinary water until it moved. Now the island of the sun has revealed its true nature. The greatest dangers are not always the ones that attack you. Sometimes they are the choices made when hope becomes desperate. You look at your companions. There are fewer now than when you left Troy. Far fewer. Each loss has changed you. Each warning has shaped you. Yet still the journey continues. Tomorrow the sea will take its price. And this time, no rope, no clever plan, and no command will be enough to prevent it. The morning after the sacred cattle are taken arrives with an unnatural quiet. The island looks unchanged. That may be the most unsettling part. The grass still moves beneath the breeze. The waves still touch the shore. The sunlight still spreads across the fields where the cattle once grazed. Nothing in the landscape announces what has happened. Yet everything feels different. You stand near the ship and look back toward the island. You think of all the warnings that brought you here. Tiresias speaking among the shadows of the dead. Circe beside the glowing fire. The repeated instruction carried across worlds. Do not touch the cattle. For so long, you believed the greatest challenges of your voyage would be monsters, creatures with impossible forms, dangers that could be seen. But the final danger before your next journey was not outside the men. It was within them, and perhaps that is why it was so difficult. A monster can be avoided. A temptation must be resisted. The men prepare the ship in silence. They do not speak proudly about what happened. They know. The evidence remains. The sacred animals of Helios were not ordinary animals, whether the ancient Greeks imagined them literally as divine cattle or symbolically as a sacred boundary. The meaning was clear. Some things existed beyond human desire. Not everything available belongs to you. Not everything that can be taken should be taken. This lesson appears throughout Greek mythology. Mortals often suffer not because they lack courage, but because they forget limits. Prometheus reaches beyond what belongs to the gods. Icarus flies beyond what human beings can safely attempt. Arachne challenges divine order. The stories return again and again to the same question. What happens when human desire crosses a boundary? Now your companions have answered that question. The consequences have not yet arrived, but you can feel them approaching. The wind that finally returns should bring relief. Instead, it feels like a summons. The sail rises, the ropes tighten. The ship leaves the island. You watch Thrinacia disappear behind you. A strange sadness settles over you, not only because you fear what will happen, because you understand the tragedy. These men did not begin as reckless sinners. They were survivors. They were exhausted. They were hungry. They were human. That does not erase their choice, but it explains it. An explanation matters. You have learned that people are rarely simple. Heroes can be proud. Kings can be foolish. Sailors can be desperate. Even you, the man known for wisdom and cunning, have made choices that brought suffering. The sea grows darker. Clouds gather. At first, the men believe it is only another storm. Then the wind changes. The air becomes heavy. The temperature drops. You look upward. The sky is transformed. The calm blue has disappeared behind thick clouds moving with unnatural speed. Thunder rolls, not distant, close. The men stop working. Everyone understands. A storm is coming. But this is not like the storms you have survived before. This feels different. Not simply weather. A response. A message. A judgment. Ancient Greek tradition often connected divine anger with the natural world. Storms, earthquakes, and strange events could become signs of the gods' reaction to human actions. Modern historians may interpret such stories as reflections of moral ideas and ancient attempts to understand unpredictable forces of nature. Yet aboard your ship, the distinction feels meaningless. You know only that something has changed. Lightning tears across the sky. The sea rises. Waves strike the hull. The ship that carried you through Troy. The Cyclops, the Sirens, Scylla, and Charybdis now feels fragile beneath the storm. Wood. Rope. Human hands. Nothing more. You shout commands. The crew responds. They pull the ropes. They fight the wind. They struggle to keep the ship upright. For a moment, it seems possible. Perhaps you can survive again. Perhaps the gods will show mercy. Then the first wave strikes. The mast bends. The sail tears. Men fall across the deck. The storm does not attack like Scylla. It does not tempt like the Sirens. It overwhelms. There is no conversation, no bargain, no strategy, only survival. You remember the Cyclops. You remember the confidence you felt after escaping. You remember shouting your name across the sea. That pride seems far away now. The sea has taken everything from you except the ability to endure. The ship breaks. The world becomes water. Thunder. Darkness. You reach for anything. A piece of wood. A rope. A part of the ship that was your home for so many years. Around you, voices disappear one by one. The men who followed you through every danger vanish into the storm. You call their names. The wind takes them. The sea answers with silence. When morning comes, the ship is gone. The storm has passed. The sea is calm again, almost peaceful. You cling to the remains of the vessel alone. The prophecy has completed itself. The warnings were true. The journey has taken everything. Your companions, your ship, your certainty. Only you remain. And perhaps this is the deepest transformation of Odysseus. The man who began the journey believed survival came from having companions, weapons, ships, and plans. Now all of those have been taken. What remains? A person, a memory, a desire to return. You float beneath the open sky. The sun rises. The waves move gently. And somewhere beyond the horizon, beyond the endless blue, lies the only place you still seek. Ithaca. Not because it is easy. Not because the journey has promised happiness. But because after everything the sea has taken, the idea of home remains. And as you drift alone, you understand something the Sirens could never teach you. Knowledge is not what saves a person. Nor is glory, nor is power. Sometimes what keeps someone alive is simply the memory of where they belong. The sea becomes silent after the storm. Not peaceful, not comforting, silent. You float alone beneath a sky that seems impossibly large. The waves that destroyed your ship now move gently beneath you, lifting and lowering your exhausted body as though nothing has happened. That is the cruelty of the sea. It can destroy an entire world in one night, then wake beneath the morning sun as if it remembers nothing. You cling to a piece of broken wood from the ship, the last remains of the vessel that carried you from Troy. The ship was more than timber and rope. It was a place where memories lived. You remember the voices of your companions, the arguments, the laughter, the songs during long nights beneath the stars, the quiet conversations about home. All of it is gone now. The sea has taken the final traces of the crew who began the journey with you. You are alone. For a long time you simply drift. No command to give, no sail to adjust, no direction to choose. The man who once guided ships and armies now depends entirely on the movement of water. Perhaps this is the final lesson of the voyage. Control was always temporary. You commanded others. You commanded ships. You commanded your own reputation. But the sea has a way of removing every illusion. It leaves only what cannot be taken: memory, will, the desire to continue. As the sun moves across the sky, your thoughts return to those who are gone. The men lost to Scylla, the men lost in the storm, the men who never saw Ithaca again. You wonder whether the Sirens would have remembered them. Would they have sung their names? Would they have preserved their stories? Or would they have cared only for the great heroes and famous kings? That thought stays with you, because the true tragedy of the journey is not only the loss of warriors, it is the loss of ordinary people. The world remembers kings, poets remember battles, but every voyage is carried by countless individuals whose names disappear. Ancient Greek epic often focused on heroes, yet beneath those heroic stories existed a deep awareness of mortality. Glory could preserve a name, but it could not restore a life. You understand this now. The Sirens promised immortality through knowledge, but the dead remain dead. The only thing the living can give them is remembrance. Night arrives. The stars appear. You are reminded of the nights aboard the ship with your companions. You used to look upward and wonder which gods watched over you. Now the stars feel different, less like signs, more like witnesses. They have seen everything. Troy, the storms, the monsters, the losses. They remain unchanged. You close your eyes. Sleep comes, and once again you dream. You are standing in Ithaca. The palace is before you. But the doors are closed. You walk forward. You touch the stone. It feels cold beneath your hand. Then you hear voices inside. Strangers, men laughing, men drinking, men who do not belong there. You try to enter. The door will not open. Then a familiar voice speaks behind you. Penelope. She does not sound angry, only tired. She says your name. You turn, but before you can see her face, the dream ends. You wake beneath the stars. The dream troubles you. Was it a prophecy, a warning, a reflection of your fear? Again, there is no answer. But after everything you've experienced, you understand that dreams can carry their own truths even when they do not predict the future. They reveal what the heart already knows. You fear arriving too late. You fear discovering that home continued without you. You fear that after surviving everything, there may be nothing left to return to. That fear keeps you awake. But it also keeps you alive. Days pass. The sea continues. You survive on fragments, on patience, on stubbornness. The same quality that once made you dangerous now keeps you moving. You refuse to disappear. Not because you believe the journey will be easy. You no longer believe that. You continue because somewhere beyond the horizon is a place connected to your name. Ithaca. The island becomes more than land. It becomes memory, promise, identity. Perhaps that is why the Odyssey has endured for thousands of years. The journey is not only about monsters and gods. It is about the human need to return to something meaningful after being changed by suffering. Every person knows some version of this journey. The distance may not be across oceans. The monsters may not have claws. The storms may not come from the sky. But every life contains moments when the path home seems impossibly far away. And still, people continue. You drift beneath the stars. The sea whispers around you. You no longer hear the sirens. You no longer hear the roar of Charybdis. You no longer hear the screams beneath Scylla's cliff. Only the water, only the wind, only your own breathing. And perhaps that is enough. Because after all the voices that tried to tell you who you were, you are finally alone with yourself. Not a king, not a warrior, not a hero from songs. Just a man who wants to return home. Morning comes. The horizon brightens. Far away, another shape begins to appear. Not the dark outline of a monster's island. Not a threatening cliff. A coastline. A place where you may finally rest. But the journey is not yet finished. The sea has one more lesson, and destiny has not yet released its hold. The coastline ahead slowly becomes clearer, after so long seeing only waves and sky. The sight of land feels almost unreal, a distant shore, a place where your feet may once again touch earth. Yet before you reach it, your mind returns to the path behind you, the islands, the warnings, the monsters, the voices. For many travellers, the Odyssey would be remembered as a story of impossible obstacles, a man crossing a world filled with creatures beyond human understanding. But for ancient Greeks, the journey carried meanings deeper than the surface of the adventure. The monsters were not only monsters, they were reflections. The Sirens, Scylla, Charybdis, each represented a different danger that every human being might encounter. The Sirens offered something beautiful. That was their power. They did not attack with violence. They invited. They appealed to curiosity, memory, pride, and longing. They understood that a person does not always need to be forced into danger. Sometimes a person walks toward danger willingly because the thing being offered seems impossible to refuse. You experienced this yourself. You were not drawn by hunger, not by fear, not by weakness. You were drawn by the desire to know. The same desire that made you clever enough to survive Troy nearly became the reason you never left the Sirens' Island. This contradiction is what made your story meaningful. A quality that creates greatness can also create vulnerability. Your intelligence saved you. Your curiosity endangered you. Your ambition brought glory. Your pride brought suffering. Ancient audiences understood these contradictions. Heroes were not perfect examples to imitate. They were larger versions of human beings. They carried strengths and weaknesses together. That is why your journey remained powerful long after the first songs about it were performed. The story did not present a flawless hero. It presented someone recognizable, someone who could be brilliant and foolish, compassionate and secretive, courageous and afraid. You look toward the sea ahead. The water is calm now, but you remember Charybdis. The whirlpool represents another kind of danger. Unlike the Sirens, Charybdis does not persuade. She does not understand. She does not negotiate. She simply exists. She represents forces beyond human control. Storms, disasters, time, death. The things that no amount of intelligence can completely defeat. Every sailor understands this. A ship can be built stronger. A captain can become wiser. A crew can become more skilled. Yet the sea will always remain larger. Perhaps that is why Greek sailors respected the ocean so deeply. It provided everything. Trade, travel, discovery, connection. But it also reminded them that humanity existed within a world much greater than itself. Then there is Scylla, the most painful of the three, because Scylla represents a danger that cannot be escaped without cost. You cannot defeat her. You cannot bargain with her. You cannot make the perfect choice. Sometimes life places people before impossible decisions. Every available path carries loss. This idea appears throughout ancient Greek tragedy. The question is not always, how do you avoid suffering? Sometimes the question is, how do you remain human when suffering cannot be avoided? You learn this beneath Scylla's cliff. The monster took 6 men, but the greater test was what happened afterward. Would you see them only as a number, or would you remember them as people? You chose memory. That choice matters, because memory is one of the strongest forces in the human world. Kingdoms disappear, cities fall, ships sink, but stories survive. The names of ordinary people may vanish from written records, yet the emotions surrounding them remain. Grief, love, loyalty, loss. Perhaps that is why epic stories endured through generations before being written down. They carried not only events, but human experiences. Historians continue to debate how much of the Odyssey reflects actual Bronze Age memories, later Greek traditions, or the imagination of poets shaping centuries of oral storytelling. Archaeological discoveries have revealed details about ancient ships, settlements, trade routes, and Mediterranean cultures that help modern researchers understand the world behind the myths. Yet no excavation can uncover exactly what a sailor felt while looking toward an unknown shore. That belongs to the story, and perhaps that is why the monsters remain alive. They are not alive because people believe every detail happened exactly as described. They remain alive because they represent experiences that never disappear. Every generation finds its own Sirens, its own Charybdis, its own Scylla. The forms change, the struggle remains. You think again of the rope around your body. At the time it felt like imprisonment. Now you understand it differently. The rope was a promise made by your wiser self to protect you from your weaker self. There is humility in that, to recognize your own limits, to prepare for moments when judgment may fail. This may be one of the quietest lessons of the Odyssey. Wisdom does not mean believing you are beyond temptation. Wisdom means knowing you are not. The coastline grows closer. Birds appear above the water. The air smells different. Earth, trees, fresh water, the familiar sense of a world with soil beneath it. You have spent so long among waves that land itself feels like a dream. But before you step onto this new shore, you pause, because you know something now. The journey has changed you. The man who left Troy wanted victory. The man who survived the monsters wants something simpler. Home, not glory, not endless knowledge, not the approval of strangers, just home. The sea behind you holds everything you have lost. The shore ahead holds everything you still hope to find. Between them stands the person you have become. And perhaps that is the greatest transformation of all. The Odyssey is not only about travelling across the world, it is about becoming someone who can finally return. The shore grows closer with every passing hour. The water beneath you becomes shallower. The colour changes from the deep blue of open sea to lighter shades near the coast. Beneath the surface, you can almost see the movement of sand and stone. After so many years surrounded by endless water, the sight feels like a promise. Land, something solid, something that does not move beneath your feet. Yet before you step forward, you find yourself looking back, not because you wish to return, because you understand now that the sea behind you contains every version of yourself that existed before. The warrior who sailed toward Troy, the commander who believed cleverness could solve every problem, the survivor who escaped impossible dangers, the leader who watched companions disappear, the man who listened to the Sirens, the man who passed between Scylla and Charybdis, the man who floated alone after losing everything. All of them travelled the same road. All of them were you. The sea became more than a setting for your journey. It became a place where your character was tested. Ancient Greeks often imagined the natural world as connected to moral and spiritual forces. Mountains, rivers, forests, and seas were not empty landscapes. They were places where humans encountered powers larger than themselves. A journey through nature could also become a journey through the self. Your voyage across the Mediterranean was therefore not only geographical, it was internal. Every island revealed something. Every danger uncovered something hidden. The Sirens revealed your desire for knowledge. Scylla revealed the limits of power. Charybdis revealed the existence of forces beyond control. Thrinacia revealed human weakness. Each place became a mirror, and each mirror showed a different part of you. You think about the moment you first left Troy. The war had ended. The city had fallen. The Greeks celebrated victory. Songs would be sung. Names would be remembered. At that moment, you were still a man defined by achievement, a hero returning from greatness. But the journey home stripped away those victories one by one. The Cyclops did not care about your reputation. The sea didn't care about your clever plans. The Sirens didn't care about your armor. The monsters did not see a famous warrior. They saw a mortal. Perhaps this was the greatest lesson hidden within the voyage. Human beings often define themselves through what they accomplish, the kingdoms they build, the battles they win, the recognition they receive. But sooner or later, every person encounters something that removes those titles. What remains then? You have learned the answer slowly. Memory, character, the ability to continue. The shore approaches. You imagine Ithaca. Not as a kingdom, not as a possession, as a place filled with people. This distinction matters. Earlier in your journey, you wanted to return because you were a king. Now you want to return because you are a husband, a father, a man who has been away too long. The Sirens understood your longing, but they distorted it. They offered a perfect image of home, a memory without pain, a future without uncertainty. But real home is not perfect. Real home contains time, change, loss. The people you return to will not be exactly as you remember them, and you will not be the same person who left. That is another mystery at the heart of the Odyssey. Can someone truly return, or does every journey create a new person who must find a new relationship with the place they left behind? Historians and literary scholars have explored this question for centuries. The poem is not simply about reaching Ithaca. It is about the difficulty of belonging after transformation. The destination is important, but the person arriving is equally important. You think of Penelope, you think of Telemachus. You wonder how they have changed. The Sirens gave you imagined voices. Now you must discover real ones. The difference feels enormous, because reality is always more complicated than dreams. The sea breeze moves across the deck. Your clothes are worn. Your hands are marked. Your face has changed. Years have passed. The man who arrives at Ithaca will carry scars invisible to anyone who did not share the journey. Perhaps that is why recognition becomes such an important theme in your story. People must not only find each other, they must understand who they have become. The ship reaches the coastline. You prepare to leave the water behind. The ground waits, but before stepping onto land, you pause once more. You think about the monsters, the names that have travelled through generations. Sirens, Scylla, Charybdis. People often remember them because they are frightening, but perhaps fear is only the surface. Beneath the monsters are questions. What do you desire? What can you control? What must you accept? How do you continue when the world takes something from you? These questions are not ancient. They belong to every age. Every person faces moments when the path narrows, when every choice has a cost, when there is no perfect answer. The Odyssey survives because it does not pretend such moments can be avoided. Instead, it asks what kind of person you become while moving through them. The waves behind you settle. The shore is quiet. The journey through the sea is ending, but another journey remains. The journey of return. The journey of recognition. The journey of discovering whether the home you remember still exists. You step closer to the edge of the ship. The earth waits, and for the first time in many years, you are not looking for a way to survive. You are looking for a way to belong. The shore is close now, close enough that you can see the movement of trees along the coastline, close enough to smell earth carried across the water. After years of salt and storms, the scent feels almost unfamiliar. You have spent so long belonging to the sea that land itself seems like another world. Yet before you step onto it, your thoughts return to everything that brought you here. The gods, the prophecies, the warnings, the choices. For the ancient Greeks, no journey existed completely separate from divine influence. The world was filled with powers beyond human sight. Gods moved through storms, dreams, battles, and moments of sudden understanding. But the Odyssey does not present mortals as helpless. That is what makes your story so complex. You are guided. You are warned. You are sometimes protected. But you still choose. Again and again, the road changes because of human decisions. The gods may shape the sea, but mortals still steer the ship. You think of Athena. For much of your journey, she has remained a quiet presence, not always appearing openly, not always changing events with obvious miracles. Often, her influence arrives as thought, a moment of clarity, a sudden idea, the ability to see a solution where others see only disaster. This is fitting because Athena represents more than victory. She represents intelligence used with restraint, wisdom, strategy, the ability to understand when action is needed and when patience is wiser. Yet even with Athena's favour, you have suffered. This raises one of the oldest mysteries within Greek mythology. If the gods support someone, does that mean the person will avoid suffering? Your journey answers differently. Divine favour does not create an easy life. It may create the ability to endure a difficult one. The gods do not remove every storm. They reveal what a person becomes during the storm. You remember Poseidon, the opposite force, the god whose anger has followed you since the cave of Polyphemus. That single encounter changed everything. You escaped the Cyclops. You saved your men. You survived. But then pride entered. You revealed your name. You wanted recognition. You wanted your enemy to know who had defeated him. That moment carried consequences across years. A single choice. A single voice shouted across the sea. A single name. Odysseus. The story remains powerful because the mistake feels human. You were not destroyed because you were weak. You suffered because one of your greatest strengths became dangerous. Confidence became pride. Cleverness became arrogance. The same qualities that made you extraordinary also created your vulnerability. Ancient Greek audiences understood this tension deeply. The greatest heroes were often closest to greatness and danger at the same time. A person who possesses unusual abilities must also learn unusual discipline. Power without wisdom can become a curse. You think of the Sirens again. They praised your intelligence. They reminded you of your achievements. They offered a world where your greatness could be fully recognized. But they never mentioned your mistakes. They offered only one version of you, the perfect hero, the man without regret, the man without failure. But that person does not exist, not even in myth. The real Odysseus is the man who survives both triumph and error, the man who carries victories and losses together. You look toward the shore. The waves gently touch the ship. A bird passes overhead. Again, you wonder. A sign, a message, or simply nature moving through its ordinary rhythm. Perhaps the answer matters less than it once did. Earlier, you searched every event for meaning because you wanted certainty. Now you understand something different. Meaning is not always discovered. Sometimes it is created through the way you respond. A storm is a storm. A wave is a wave. A loss is a loss. But the person who faces them determines what they become. The dead companions from Scylla did not become meaningless because they died. They became part of your memory. The ship destroyed by the storm did not erase your journey. It became another chapter in the story you carry. Fate and choice exist together. This is one of the deepest ideas in Greek storytelling. Fate may establish boundaries, but within those boundaries, characters revealed. You could not prevent every danger. You could not save every companion. You could not control every outcome. But you could decide how to face each moment. That is where humanity exists. Not in controlling everything, in choosing what kind of person to be when control disappears. You remember the dream before the Sirens, the empty palace, the silent halls, the voice calling from beyond the door. At the time, it frightened you. Now you understand it differently. Perhaps the dream was not only about losing home. Perhaps it was about the fear that you had changed too much to return. The greatest distance between a person and home is not always measured in miles. Sometimes it is measured in transformation. The man who left is not the man who returns. The question is whether those two people can become one. The sun lowers toward the horizon. The coastline glows with warm light. You prepare to step ashore, but before you do, you look once more at the sea, the place that tested you, the place that took so much, the place that also carried you. You cannot hate it. Not completely. The sea was not your enemy. It was your teacher. It revealed what you were made of. It removed what you thought you needed. And it left behind what truly mattered. A memory of home, a desire to return, a reason to continue. The shore waits. The gods remain silent. The future remains uncertain. And perhaps, after everything, that uncertainty no longer feels like a threat. It feels like life. The coastline before you is no longer a distant promise. It is real. The sound of waves changes as the ship approaches the shore. The deep rhythm of open water becomes a softer movement against sand and stone. The wind carries the scent of trees and soil, and after so many years surrounded by salt, even the smell of earth feels like a forgotten memory returning. You stand quietly. For a moment, you allow yourself to imagine that the journey is finished. The monsters are behind you. The storms are behind you. The voices, the cliffs, the whirlpools, the impossible choices, all behind you. But the Odyssey has never been a simple journey from one place to another. It is a journey through layers of loss, transformation, and understanding. And before you can truly return, there is still one final shadow from the sea that must be carried. You think of Thrinacia, the island of the sun, the place where warnings became reality. It remains one of the most painful memories of your voyage because the danger there was not hidden. There was no cavern, no monster, no enchanted voice. The cattle stood openly beneath the sunlight, beautiful, sacred, untouched. The choice was visible, the warning was clear, and still, human weakness prevailed. Perhaps this is why that episode has remained one of the most haunting parts of your journey. The greatest dangers are not always the ones we fail to recognize. Sometimes they are the ones we recognize completely and still cannot overcome. You understand this better than anyone. You had heard Circe's warning. You had heard Tiresias. You had repeated the command yourself. And yet, even after surviving the Sirens, even after passing between Scylla and Charybdis, your companions reached the edge of their endurance. They were hungry. They were exhausted. They were afraid. The same men who had faced monsters could not defeat desperation. That contradiction remains deeply human. Ancient Greek audiences would have understood this tension between divine order and human weakness. The gods represented forces beyond ordinary life, but mortals were judged by their choices within difficult circumstances. The question was never only, why did this happen? The deeper question was, what does this reveal about human nature? You have asked this question repeatedly throughout the voyage. At Troy, with Polyphemus, with the Sirens, with Scylla, with Charybdis. Each time the answer changed. At Troy, you learned that intelligence could defeat strength. With the Cyclops, you learned that pride could undo victory. With the Sirens, you learned that even wisdom requires preparation. With Scylla, you learned that leadership sometimes means carrying impossible decisions. With Thrinacia, you learned that warnings cannot replace self-control. The journey has been a series of lessons, not because you lacked wisdom, because wisdom must be tested before it becomes part of a person. Anyone can understand a lesson when danger is distant. The true test comes when the danger is near, when hunger is real, when fear is immediate, when the easier choice stands within reach. You think of your companions. You do not remember them only for their final mistake. That would be too simple. They were sailors, warriors, survivors. They carried you across seas where many others would have fallen. They were not defined by one moment alone, just as you're not defined only by your mistakes. This may be one of the quiet truths hidden within the Odyssey. A person is larger than their worst decision, but a decision can still change everything. The sea ahead is calm. The shore draws closer. You imagine the land beyond. Perhaps there will be forests, perhaps hidden paths, perhaps places where you can rest. But you know better than to believe rest means the journey has ended. A traveller does not simply return by reaching land. A traveller must still discover whether the world left behind is the same. You wonder about Ithaca. You wonder about your palace. You wonder about Penelope. The siren showed you an imagined home. Now you must face the real one. The difference between the two is enormous. The sirens offered perfection. Reality offers uncertainty. But reality is where life exists. The sun begins to lower. Golden light spreads across the water. For a moment, you think about Helios watching from above, the god who sees everything, the god whose cattle carried such importance. Perhaps this is why sunlight appears so often in the story. The sun reveals, it exposes, it leaves little room for hiding. The sirens belong to the mystery of sound. Scylla belonged to the darkness of cliffs. Charybdis belonged to the hidden movement beneath the sea. But Helios belongs to visibility. Nothing was hidden on Thrinacia. The truth stood in plain sight. And perhaps that was the final test. Not whether you could discover danger, but whether you could respect a boundary even when nothing forced you to. The shore is close now. The ship moves forward. The past remains behind you. Yet every wave carries its memory. Every scar carries a story. Every silence carries a name. You are approaching the final stages of the journey. Not the end, never simply the end. Because a person does not become whole when they arrive somewhere. They become whole by understanding what they carried there. The sun disappears beyond the horizon. Stars appear. The sea becomes dark and quiet. And beneath that endless sky, You move toward the place where your story will finally become a memory rather than a struggle. Home is waiting, but first you must discover who has been waiting for you. The journey slows, not because the sea has become gentler, but because something inside you has changed. For so long, every wave carried urgency. Every island carried danger. Every horizon held a question. You measured time by survival. How long until the next storm? How long until the next monster? How long until the gods demanded another sacrifice? Now, after everything, the silence feels different. The sea no longer seems like an enemy waiting to test you. It feels like a witness, a vast, endless memory holding every moment you have endured. You think back to the beginning, to the warrior who sailed from Troy believing that victory would be the hardest part. He had defeated a city. He had earned a name. He had stood among kings, yet that man did not understand the true difficulty of returning. Winning a war was one thing. Returning from it was another. The journey home asked questions that battle never asked. Who are you when there is no enemy before you? Who are you when strength cannot solve the problem? Who are you when the only thing left is patience? The Sirens asked you those questions first. They offered everything you thought you wanted. Knowledge, memory, certainty. They offered a world where every mystery could be answered. But you learned that some mysteries are part of being alive. Not everything must be known. Not everything can be known. The rope around the mast saved you because another version of yourself understood this before you did. The wiser Odysseus protected the weaker Odysseus. A decision made in peace saved you during temptation. Perhaps that is one of the quiet lessons the Sirens left behind. Wisdom is not believing you will never fall. Wisdom is preparing for the moment when you might. Then came Scylla and Charybdis. The passage between them remains with you. Not because you defeated the monsters. You did not. That is important. The hero of the Odyssey does not survive because every enemy is destroyed. He survives because he learns when destruction is impossible. Scylla took men you loved. Charybdis threatened to take everything. The sea demanded a price. And you continued. You carried grief without allowing grief to end the journey. That may be the hardest form of courage. Not the courage to attack, the courage to continue. The dead remain with you. They always will. Their names are not written only in songs or carved into stone. They exist in memory, in the stories you carry, in the moments when you remember their voices. Mortality is one of the great themes hidden within the Odyssey. Every hero faces it. Every king. Every warrior. Every sailor. The gods may live beyond time, but humans do not. And perhaps that is why human lives matter so deeply. A mortal moment is precious because it cannot be repeated. A sunrise is beautiful because it ends. A reunion matters because separation was possible. A homecoming matters because the traveller could have never returned. You look toward the horizon. Somewhere ahead is Ithaca, the island of your birth, the place where your story began before Troy and before the sea. You imagine the hills, the olive trees, the stone paths, the halls where memories remain. But you know now that returning does not mean going backward. The person who left cannot come back unchanged. The sea has taken too much, given too much, revealed too much. You are not the same man who sailed away. Perhaps no one ever is. Every person carries invisible voyages. Every life contains storms that others cannot see. Every person returns from something, and when they return, they bring the journey with them. The night grows quiet. The stars shine above the water, the same stars that watched Troy burn, the same stars that watched your ship past the Sirens, the same stars that watched you float alone after everything was taken away. They remain, and perhaps that is comforting. Some things endure. Memory, stories, the longing to return, the desire to be known, the human search for meaning. The Odyssey survived for thousands of years because it understands something simple and profound. The journey is never only about reaching the destination. It is about what the journey reveals. The monsters were never only monsters. They were questions. The sea was never only water. It was uncertainty. The voyage was never only distance. It was transformation. You began as a warrior seeking victory. You became a traveller seeking home. And perhaps, beneath everything else, You became something even more important, a person who understands the value of returning. The waves move gently. The ship travels beneath the stars. The world becomes quiet. There are no more voices calling from forbidden shores. No more cliffs hiding monsters. No more whirlpools waiting beneath dark water. Only the sea, only the wind, only the slow movement toward home. And as the night deepens, you allow yourself to remember without pain. The Sirens' song no longer feels like a temptation. It feels like a distant echo, a reminder of how close you came to losing yourself. Scylla's shadow no longer feels like only terror. It reminds you of the companions whose lives shaped yours. Charybdis no longer feels like only destruction. It reminds you that survival itself is something precious. The past remains, but it no longer controls you. It has become part of your story. And perhaps that is what every journey eventually asks of a person. Not to forget what happened, not to escape the past, but to carry it with wisdom. The sea grows darker. Your breathing slows. The sound of water against the ship becomes steady and gentle. The stars remain above you. The same ancient sky that watched countless travellers cross unknown waters. You are one of them, a name carried by stories, a person shaped by loss and hope, a traveller who searched for home and discovered himself along the way. And now, beneath the quiet heavens, the voyage finally begins to rest. The waves rise softly, then fall. The wind moves through the sails, then fades. The world becomes still. You do not need to chase answers anymore. You do not need to defeat every shadow. You do not need to know every secret hidden beyond the horizon. For tonight, it is enough to remember, enough to breathe, enough to know that after storms, after darkness, after endless wandering, there is always the possibility of return. The sea whispers below, the stars watch above, and somewhere beyond the gentle horizon, home waits quietly,